especially Andrew. I like yelling at Andrew a lot. On Twitter, I think I'm Kornith at Basil I lover, and yeah, that's basically it.
Two massive criticisms for you right away, Kornith. How about you use your big boy voice? Let's start with that, and then also, well, I don't know. I think that's enough. Sinthe, nice to see you back on the Crucible. You just made your recent re-debut on here. Glad to have you back. Why don't you do the same thing?
Sure, what's up? I'm Sinthe. You can find me on youtube.com/SINTHE. I mostly debate ethical topics, do philosophy stuff. Today we're doing an ethical topic. It's veganism, so it should be pretty interesting.
Vegan Gains, nice to see you back. Long time comer to the Crucible. Has done a lot of debates on the channel. He's also live streaming right now if you'd like to watch it from his perspective. Same thing with Made by Jimbob. Vegan Gains, go ahead, do the same thing. Just kind of briefly tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where they can find you, what you're about.
Yeah, so I run the YouTube channel Vegan Gains. I mostly talk about, vegan-related topics, but I also do political stuff now, too. And of course, if you want to see my beautiful, amazing body, you can also check me out on OnlyFans.
Jimbob, nice to see you back on the Crucible. I've done a lot of content with Jimbob, a long-time debater on this channel. Go ahead, do the same thing. Take a minute, tell everybody where they can find you, a little bit about yourself.
Made by Jimbob. I'm mostly a political cartoonist on Instagram and other avenues. I have a channel, The Made by Jimbob Show, you can find on YouTube as well. I do debates, commentary, some comedy, and a bunch of panels as well. So,
do you mind flexing, Jimbob? I feel.
I think I got the best biceps.
Vegan Gains wins that one.
Yeah, I think he wins that one too. Posh Redneck, nice to see you back. Same thing to you. You just started a new channel. Tell everybody where they can find that and briefly a little bit about yourself.
Well, I hardly just started it. I just started posting stuff now that I figured that out. Because I don't just sound like I'm from 1,000 years ago. Apparently, my technological aptitude matches that. So I'm primarily a linguist. I also dabble quite a bit in theology and philosophy. And that's what my channel is about, the Posh Redneck. And on Instagram, _Posh_Redneck. And I'm about to go back into making memes because I sure like it. I don't know why I haven't been for a while. So that's a mystery for all of us. And that's about it for now.
Can you tell the audience whether or not your facial hair grows in all white trashy like that just because that was the gift from God? Or is it, do you have to actually shave it into that shape?
Well, the biggest reason is that my brother stole all the facial hair genes. He's got a full beard, full mustache, and so as a younger brother, I'm sort of, condemned to deal with the leftovers. So here I am, looking rather Mongolian, but that's what I have to deal with.
Well, fair enough. And then Alex PWF, you see a lot of crossover content between our channels as well. No stranger to the Crucible. Go ahead, take a minute, shout yourself out, your channel out. Your first time. Go ahead.
Andrew's rapidly becoming a degen, so my work is almost done. I run a channel called Playing with Fire. We do a lot of dating advice, relationship stuff, self-improvement, but also we do debates about anything and everything. Andrew has been on my channel a million times. We've had some really, really juicy debates. In fact, one very recently, a few days ago with Destiny. That one's extremely fascinating. So yeah, check it out.
Okay, guys, really appreciate those intros. Now I'm going to run this fairly tight just in the intro portion here. I'm going to give each person 3 minutes, which is not a lot of time, to kind of summarize your position before we enter in to the back and forth. I'm going to start with the left side. And Sinthe, why don't you kick it off for us? 3 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
Sure. So the current treatment of animals is one of the most obvious moral failings our society currently deals with. This shows in the really silly arguments people make regarding veganism. Just think about how silly some of these arguments are. The arguments against veganism are. Imagine someone thought it was wrong to torture dogs for trivial pleasure in the same way that vegans think it's wrong to torture pigs and so on for the trivial pleasures of eating meat. And now imagine somebody told those anti-dog torture advocates things like, well, dog torture is really convenient and stopping it is hard. Well, that wouldn't matter. If it's true or false, that's still dumb. Well, if I stopped torturing dogs, other people would still torture them anyways. Well, that doesn't matter. Obviously, you torturing the dog is wrong even if other people are also doing it. So, well, dog torture is necessary for my health. Well, once again, this is obviously false, as there are plenty of people who are healthy and don't torture dogs, so it's clearly not necessary. But if it was true, still wouldn't matter. It would be wrong to torture dogs even if it was necessary for your health. As long as you can survive without it, even if you had to be unhealthy, still wouldn't matter. But on the other hand, the positive argument for veganism is pretty simple, causing lots of suffering for trivial pleasure, like whatever taste differences you think exist between an Impossible Burger and the normal burger, is wrong. Now let's try to think about what it is that makes some species special. Well, if you're a subjectivist, you just have to convince me that you have some incredibly rare dispositions that most people don't, where it doesn't actually would make you feel bad at all if pigs are living ankle deep in their own shit. Personally, I wouldn't believe you, but if you show me you have some like psychological evidence that's what you mean by morals, I would agree that you'd be correct there. When you say that it's not morally wrong, this is not how I or most people use the moral language, but you clearly have wild dispositions, other people don't. And if you're a realist, you'd have to convince me that some stance and independent reasons out there, for some reasons, just care about who you have the capacity to interbreed with. That seems really strange to me. That's the end of my opening statement.
Damn, short and to the point. Okay, moving over to Kornith. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes on the clock whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I think Sinthe adequately answered most of the ethical issues, so I think I'll focus my opening more along the health lines. When you look at the health benefits of veganism, the only nutrient that you're going to have a hard time getting on a vegan diet is going to be dietary cholesterol. You're going to be able to avoid a lot of carcinogens, like in red meat, just by virtue of not eating that. You're going to have lower rates of things like cancer because of that. You're going to have a much more sustainable version of a diet by, as well as going on to the, I'm sorry, that's not a health issue. That's going to go into environmental issues. You're going to have less need to transport food via trucks, which is going to lower greenhouse gas emissions, which is also then going to lower the chance of external risk like climate change, just by virtue of having less transport. And those are, you're going to also have every single nutrient you need in a healthy diet on your vegan diet. I think that's the really short part of where I wanted to go with it.
Just real quick, guys. Yeah. Who's typing?
Oh, sorry, I'm typing a lot.
Don't type. It's like my biggest pet peeve, right? Don't type when other people are talking. It's just super. It just drives me nuts. Okay?
I'll just mute myself when you can type.
All right, fair enough. Vegan Gains, go ahead. You have 3 minutes on the clock whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so I think everybody in here agrees with the idea of fundamental human rights, and I think everyone in here probably believes that we should be logically consistent. And I believe veganism is merely a logical extension of human rights. So for the same reasons you would grant a human a right to life, I believe animals are also, or should also be granted that right to life. And if somebody believes that animals do not deserve that right, then they need to point out the differences between humans and animals that would justify that. But in order to be logically consistent, you must also agree to take away the rights of human beings if they lack those traits that animals are lacking to justify taking away that right to life. So I don't think there's any way to justify taking away animal rights and not granting them human rights without also taking away rights from some humans. So I think that's something that we're going to have to discuss tonight. And as far as the health part of this, it's pretty obvious to me in the research and the data that vegan diets are perfectly healthful for all stages of the life cycle. It also confers health benefits. Vegans tend to be at a healthier body weight. They have lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, lower instances of diabetes, obesity, and they tend to live a bit longer than the general population. And find any evidence of it, you can also be a jacked son of a bitch on a vegan diet, and you can get all the protein you need. So that's my opening statement done.
Okay, then moving over to the right side of the panel, we're going to start with you, Jimbob. You have 3 minutes on the clock. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I've debated some vegans before. A lot of these arguments are the same as what are being posed today. They start with assumptions like there's rights. They start with assumptions like there's ethics, and they can ground those things. What I found every single time is not only can they not ground the concept of rights in their paradigm, but they can't ground even, they can't even present the difference between a human being and an animal in their paradigm. The attempt to equalize an animal and a human being doesn't answer the question of why should we treat an animal more like a human being and not a, why don't we treat human beings more like animals? This is unanswered in their view. The difference they're going to try to argue is sentience. If this comes up, which it probably will, they're not going to be able to tell you between a crustacean, a crab, or a weasel. They're not going to tell you where sentience starts to begin. Further, if we can recreate sentience and place it in man-made objects, suddenly you're going to have to bite the bullet on house rights. And so I hope we get to house rights tonight. That's my opening.
All right. Appreciate that very much. We're going to move right over to Posh Redneck. Posh, go ahead when you're ready.
So we have already heard appeals to a consensus, like saying we all would agree that we shouldn't torture dogs. First of all, I couldn't give a damn, couldn't be persuaded to give a damn. Secondly, that bears no consequence on the debate tonight, because we are supposed to be having, as Jimbob said, a way to ground our ethics. And if we're going to ground our ethics in materialism, well, that's going to be difficult, as we will explore tonight. But also, as we talk about consequentialism, I plan on testing our counterparts here as how far they're willing to sacrifice their taste buds for the sake of either the planet or for the sake of the well-being of animals, etc. But it's going to be quite a bit of nuance here, because as far as I see it, any ideology tends to break down on specificities, because veganism is an ideology. It's not a moral system. It isn't anything of the sort. It's an arbitrary set of applying and then also removing restrictions whenever one sees fit, and however one's moral intuition, or rather taste, tends to bring them. So, not much for an opening statement. I wish to do most of make most of my points in the exchange.
Understood. And then finally, Alex, last but not least, go ahead. You have 3 minutes on the clock.
Saving the best for last. So I'm going to argue mainly from a health perspective, since that is my main disagreement with veganism. While being vegan is better than the standard American diet, it is far, far from optimal. That is why there's a bunch of ex-vegans, people who became vegan, they were, happy with it, and eventually developed health issues. There's a massive amount of people who went from being vegan to being paleo. I don't know anyone who went from being paleo to being vegan. So the switch is always in the direction of like, okay, I got to add some kind of animal protein to my diet, some kind of healthy fast. In order to be vegan and be healthy, you have to supplement a bunch of things. You cannot just eat a pure vegan diet and get all your vitamins and minerals. You have to supplement B12, iodine, omega-3, and a whole bunch of other things. Versus if you eat a paleo diet, you don't need to supplement anything, right? That's the big difference. So if you need to take supplements for this diet to give you the minerals you need, then that by default shows you that the diet is deficient in certain things that your body needs to function. Just one other statistic I'll throw out there. According to an NIH study, people on low-fat plant-based diets ate fewer daily calories but had higher insulin and blood glucose levels. Blood glucose levels are directly tied to your health, and having high blood glucose levels causes all kinds of health issues. Hopefully everyone on this panel is too young to get that yet, but I have my own bout with I was at one point pre-diabetic, and I can tell you that shit is not good. You don't want to become diabetic, and you don't want to have high blood glucose levels compared to people when they ate a low carbohydrate animal-based diet. They had actually lower blood glucose levels. So there's a whole bunch of science and studies that show the downsides of being vegan. Again, it's better than eating a standard American diet, but there's a step that's above that, which is going to make you much healthier and give you much higher quality of health.
Is that your opening, Alex?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, gentlemen, I am going to open up the floor to this debate. Before I do, I want to set down just a couple of ground rules for you in the audience. There's going to be contention in both the chat and on the panel. So all Crucible crew members, remember, it's okay to argue in the chat, but keep it at least somewhat respectful and within the confines of TOS. I asked the same thing for the panelists. I understand this is going to be very contentious. I'm not going to break up every exchange immediately, right? Unless there's so much over talking that nobody can understand what's going on. Make sure that you send in super chats via the YouTube super chat function. You'll find the $sign at the bottom. You can also send in via the Dono chat link, which is pinned on the top. If you want to send in to Vegan Gains or Made by Jimbob, who are both currently streaming this, and Alex PWF, you are streaming this, right?
I'm actually not streaming it.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
Yeah.
But you can send in super chats to their channels by going to their channels as well. And what I'm going to try to do is allow everybody to pull up their super chats near the end of this debate. We are going to be taking in callers tonight as well. With that, gentlemen, the floor is open. Go ahead.
Kornith,
I want that question to the right side of the panel really quick that we kind of we all want answered, which is just what is it that gives humans moral value that doesn't apply to animals?
That they are human and not animals.
And how do you
It's not
define
in that
that?
categorization.
Yeah, that's a circular argument. You have to give us your definition of human or give us what it means to be a human.
I think it's a higher level of consciousness.
Yes, and you can say the Homo
higher
sapiens
level of
sapiens, and
consciousness.
why isn't the categorization of Homo sapiens sapiens enough?
So one of you is saying it's the higher level of consciousness, so it's not the species.
I'd
Alex
agree
is saying,
with
which makes
Alex.
sense. Yeah, and you'd agree with Alex that the reason that humans are valuable is because of their higher levels of consciousness?
Like, would you
Because,
say there's a
Homo
difference
sapiens
between a rat?
Sorry,
and
so
like
just to be really clear, a Homo
Yeah.
sapiens sapiens is not the same as somebody with a higher level of consciousness. They're a stupid Homo sapiens sapiens, right?
Okay, so would you say there's a difference between like a cockroach and a dog
Yeah.
in terms of levels of
Yeah, there certainly
consciousness?
are.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So, following that logic, why would humans not be even higher levels of consciousness since we learned how to use tools?
The average human is. Right, our view is the average human is. There are some humans who are dumber and we don't think they should be tortured. And you don't think they should be tortured either, so clearly it's not the higher
So
level
there,
of
so it's the cat. So then go with the
Even-
category then of human being.
even a
Yeah, then
human
you're
who's kind of
stating the
dumb
argument.
is still
It's
a higher
Homo
level of
sapien?
consciousness than an animal.
So Homo sapien is the trait?
No, that's a category. Traits are within a category.
Right.
It's not
so,
the reasoning isn't the trait itself.
Categorizations are based on traits.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not the same as traits though.
All right, so let me pose
It's
the
not the
question like this.
categorization.
Well, let me pose this question. You have a gun to your head. There's two buns. First bun is one human being dies.
I
Second
kill the
bun,
animal.
Five cows die.
Well, it depends on
Oh,
the
5
human
cows
being.
die? I think it would depend on the human being, but I think I would lean towards killing the 5 cows.
Okay, so you, by your own logic,
I value humans more than humans more than the average animal.
So that
Yeah,
answers the
but if a
question.
human was sufficiently stupid and a human was sufficiently immoral, then I would think, yeah, kill the stupid immoral person before you kill the 5 cows.
You don't know. In this
So,
analogy,
by the
it's just a
way-
random human. You could
Telling
buy
you the
a nice
average.
person.
I know, yeah. Based on the average, I would kill the 5 cows.
Yeah,
Right,
by
so
the
according to
way.
your own logic, you value humans more than you value animals.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you
so
value dogs
that's
more than you
fine.
value humans, but you wouldn't rape a dog.
Wait, what makes you think I value dogs more than I value humans?
I meant the other way around if I said the. I mean, you value humans more than you value dogs, but you wouldn't rape a dog.
I wouldn't. Well, you're talking about sexual.
Well,
things.
you
I
wouldn't
wouldn't rape
torture a
cow
dog
either. But
either.
I would
You
eat
wouldn't
it.
hit a dog you wouldn't beat a dog to death with a shovel either, right?
Like,
Well,
Alex,
I would
would you
never
kill and
cause
eat a dog for
unnecessary
food?
cruelty to an animal. Yeah.
Sorry, what are you saying, VG?
Would you kill and eat a dog for food, Alex?
Would I kill? Well, if as my life is right now, no, because I have access to food. But if I was trapped on an island and it's like a stray dog and I'm literally going to starve to death, I probably would. Yeah.
Well,
I don't
you
think I would be
eat-
able to do it with my own dog because I have like a strong bond with my dog. But a random dog, if it's a matter of life and death, yeah, I think I
Well,
would.
you eat like, cows, chickens, pigs. I'm sure you eat like bacon or chicken or like beef sometimes, correct?
I don't really like pork. I mainly eat chicken and steak.
Okay, right. So, like, what's the meaningful difference between, say, a cow and your dog to where you're fine with killing the cow?
I have a bond with my dog. I don't have a bond.
What about
with
other
him.
people's dogs? What about
Yeah.
stray dogs? You wouldn't eat those either.
You wouldn't.
Well, no, like I said, if I was in a situation where I was starving, I would eat that stray dog.
Well, we're
You're
not
not in
talking
a
about a
situation
situation where you're starving.
Right.
One meaningful difference is that a dog doesn't know what a meaningful difference is.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't
well,
think that's
neither
going
do
to
some
be.
people.
That's not a meaningful difference because Alex values the dog as well. Alex isn't going to pretend that it's okay to beat dogs to death with the shovels like you guys are, right? Alex understands that there's a true answer there, which is it's wrong to beat dogs to death with shovels. It would be wrong to torture a
That's-
dog if you didn't have to.
What if that was
the obvious
disagree.
answer?
Okay, but
What if- yeah.
I think we got to draw a distinction between killing and like torture, right? Like, I don't think anyone who's anti-vegan is in favor of like torturing animals, right?
Sure,
you can make the argument that factory farming. Well, you can make an argument that factory farming is torture, but the way around that is you don't get meat from factory farms, which I don't. You eat like grass-fed, pastured cows.
Grass-fed is going to be usually cows as well.
They receive yes, but they're not kept in tight
they're capos as well.
It's a higher quality of life, and it's
grass-fed only means they're being fed forage. It doesn't mean they're not being confined.
Right, but there's different. Not all farms are the same. There's factory farm meat, and then there's pastured animals who live on a farm who have a decent amount of acres, right? So there's a difference there. But I think that if you want to make an ethical argument about like, hey, I think it's better overall ethically if you don't eat meat, I wouldn't disagree with you. I think it's more ideal if you don't kill any animals, right? But my whole argument my whole argument is, you don't agree or you do agree?
Oh, I completely agree, and I think you have the obligation to do the best that you can with the situation you're in, right?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, where do you draw the line? Because like,
just the best you can.
Well, all the clothes we're wearing, all the clothes you guys are wearing come from factory farms, factory, whatever factory shit.
The best that you can, the best, hold on, Alex, the best you can do.
Let Alex finish that sentence, because I actually want to engage with that, because I think that's an interesting
all the clothes we're wearing and the iPhones we have, some 7-year-old Chinese dude made it, working 12 hours a day.
No.
Yeah, so two issues with this. One is, it's not clear to me that sweatshop labor is actually bad for the people involved. I think that's a weird myth that we have. I think that these people, if you boycott their products entirely, now they have no job. It's a lot worse to have no job than working in a sweatshop. I think the change that needs to happen is you need to have those change over. You need to have change in places like China, where they have better working regulation. Us boycotting those products is going to make their lives better.
Yeah,
that's a weird,
wacky.
They're
you can make the same argument about cows and farms.
Well, wait. Presumably people are working the best jobs they can, so they're choosing a job that makes the most amount of money, has the best working hours, so forth. So, if you were to boycott something like iPhones that are made by Foxconn in China, yeah, the workers are being mistreated there, but if you were to boycott them, then again, presumably they'd choose a worse job that has worse pay, worse working hours. So the only way to really deal with problems like that is changing labor laws in those countries, not boycotting whatever product they're producing. So, like, do you have any evidence that boycotting a product like an iPhone would actually improve the working conditions for these workers?
I'm not actually advocating in favor of boycotting iPhones. I'm saying that there's blood on all our hands, figuratively speaking.
Well, the claim here is that Well, wait a second. The claim here is that through our own actions, we're actually worsening the lives of somebody else. So do you have any evidence that if boycott iPhones...
I'm not saying directly. Obviously, one person using an iPhone, not using an iPhone doesn't directly change anything. I'm talking about we're participating in a system that hurts other people, and meat is no different.
Sure.
If I stop eating meat, how's that? Do you think that's actually going to make any kind of change to the life of a cow?
That actually, it provably will. You will save roughly in the neighborhood of. If you eat an average amount of meat, you'll save roughly around 100 animals per year. So yes, that would make a difference.
What if you just die? How much would that save? If you just died, didn't eat anything?
Probably a net negative for the world if you die. It's probably a net negative.
How do you know that?
A lot of good because you can do a lot of good with your life.
No. How do you know? No, I didn't ask. I asked, how do you know?
I'm telling you, the ways that you know that is because we have plenty of empirical data that shows that you can do plenty of good with your life through things like listen, Jimbob, middle of a sentence, right? So listen to the answer if you want to hear the answer.
It's going to be a 9-minute sentence. 9 minutes.
It's not a 9-minute sentence. I talk really fast. A 9-minute sentence for you is like a 9-second sentence for me. So just listen to the answer. So the answer to your question is there are plenty of sources of empirical data that we know show that you can have a positive impact in your life. That would be better to have you around than not have you around. Like, for example, the data that GiveWell has on the amount of lives that you can save for just $3,000, right? For $3,000, you can save one human life. You make way more than $3,000 in the course of your lifetime. Clearly, you could do more good with your life than dying would do.
Would you agree, though, we all have blood on our hands by participating, figuratively speaking, participating in buying?
No.
Really?
So again, Alex, if you're going to claim that we're contributing to a system that abuses other human beings through bad labor, can you prove to me that through some means my me buying a certain t-shirt or me buying an iPhone actually worsens their living conditions, and by me not buying those things would improve their living conditions?
Yeah. So, for example, if you were to buy, instead of buying like a t-shirt that's made in a sweatshop, if you were to pay extra money and buy t-shirt that was made ethically or soap that was made ethically, yes, it would be the same logic as you're using for the cows. You're taking away demand. You're taking away demand for something that's unethical and putting it for something that's more ethical.
So again, how would me not buying, say, an iPhone made in the factory at Foxconn where workers are being treated, how would that improve the lives of those workers? Because again, presumably they're working the best job that is available to them. So,
so the iPhone is a tough one because there's really not much competition. I think pretty much all of the cell phone companies do it the same way. So that's a tough one.
I could just buy no cell phone. Let's assume that was the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that's really practical. But if we take something like
I could live without a cell phone.
Okay, fine. But if we take something more reasonable like T-shirts or soap or anything along the lines of that, yes, there's people who create that stuff ethically, and there's people who do it in sweatshops. So by taking your money out of the unethical business and putting in an ethical business, yes, you're going to make the same difference as you would by not eating a cow.
Well,
I just find
no, you wouldn't, because again,
the only crime is in eating animals, but not in any of the other things of being a human.
So again, in the T-shirt analogy, if I were to stop buying unethical T-shirts, quote unquote, and buy fair trade T-shirts, how would that improve the lives of the people making the unethical, quote unquote, T-shirts?
Well, because the people who are making them ethically would have extra demand, so they can hire more people. So then the people who are making them unethically, those businesses will go out of business, and so they can move over to the place that's doing it ethically.
So
right?
all of these T-shirts that are being made in these quote unquote sweatshops, they're going to be in poor places like India. A lot of the fair trade labor is just going to be in wealthier countries like in South America. So you're not actually giving an opportunity for the laborers making T-shirts in sweatshops to actually move to another country to work in better conditions.
In pretty much all these countries, there's people who have businesses who do it ethically. Are you saying like in India or in China, there's no one out of like 1 billion people who manufactures things ethically? So I'm sure there's a bunch.
I don't even know how you really define a sweatshop exactly, because people are going to have different levels of pay, different like hourly wages. I don't even know how exactly you're defining a sweatshop. Like, what is considered fair trade even?
I think we can all intuitively figure out what a sweatshop is. We're talking about horrible.
I have a way to figure this out, Alex, and maybe it'll bridge the gap.
Horrible may be different than mine. You may think
I have a way to bridge the gap here. Maybe get you to understand where we're coming from.
10 hours a day is fine. I may think like, no, 10 hours a day is too much.
Hang on, Sinthe. Let them finish their exchange, and I'll let you get in, okay?
I think we can all intuitively envision the idea of like a sweatshop where people are being exploited, where people are working crazy hours, not getting paid for shit, where they're getting injured, where kids are working. I think we can all picture that.
So let's imagine, Alex, we have 2 shops in India. One is to be as unethical and treats their workers badly, and one treats their workers much better. Now, why is it the case with the ones that treat their workers badly? Why do they have any employees at all? Why don't they just go to the ones that are treating the workers better, Alex?
Because the ones that are treating workers better are not hiring right now, because most people
exactly
right. But if you stop buying from the place that treats their workers unethically, they'll have less money, right? So they'll either go out of business or they won't be able to hire as many people. And if you're giving your money instead to the people who are doing it ethically, now they have more money to hire people. The shops that treat their workers more poorly are the ones that are able to sell cheaper products on average. That's the reason why countries in these really poor regions of the world generally have worse working conditions, is because they have to make ends meet over there. It's really difficult to, if it's the case that you're trying to compete with the same price points the shops in the first world or even higher end shops in places like India do. The higher end shops that have the more expensive clothes and so on, they're not able to gain as much income because people don't want to shop at the places that have more expensive goods, because not everyone has the money to. So if you want to spend your money on something that's more that's his point. Then his point doesn't make any sense anymore. It doesn't work. How many vegans do you think?
He's saying support the ethical one, and they'll have more money. If you keep
the ethical one costs more. So you don't have it's not a 1-to-1 equivalency, right? You can't just take your money from the cheap place and go to the more expensive place. No, he didn't. So you can't just take your money from. This is basic Posh, basic entry level econ.
Hang on. Let's let Posh get in his, what his argument is, and then Sinthe, I'll let you respond. Go ahead, Posh.
Right. I think this point is rather tangential, but I'm saying he said give extra money to support the ones who treat their workers better, meaning pay more for the same product, because to support the ones who treat the workers better.
So and then that's what he's saying, it doesn't work anymore. The argument no longer works. If you're the argument no longer works if you're saying you should pay more, right? Because now you have less money that could be going towards other things that are more good than the differences are between the different working conditions there. So the difference between the working conditions in one sweatshop in India and another sweatshop in India where the working conditions are slightly better, the difference is there. In terms of the price you're paying, you are not getting as effective. It's not as effective of a charity as taking that same money you could have spent and then spending it on something like GiveWell. So it makes no sense to do that. It's economically silly.
Worth noting,
okay, let's say you have a business. Let's say you have a business, right? Then are you okay with the business just taking all its fucking waste and dumping it in the river because it's cheaper? Well, why? It's cheaper.
Yeah.
Because I want government regulations to stop them from doing that. Boycotting them wouldn't be that effective. Boycotting them wouldn't be that effective.
Let's assume Trump. I don't know how much I can say about it. Let's assume we have a president who gets all the. Well, that's kind of already happened to some extent. That gets rid of all the regulations, right? So companies actually have the option of dumping. So then you would not be okay with it, or you would be okay with it?
I'd probably buy the cheaper product still, and then what I would do is with my excess money is then put that towards political campaigns that can then fix those bad regulations.
Yeah. By the way, I think it's worth noting that.
But just because directly supporting a company who's doing that.
I think it's worth noting that just because working conditions are poor, it doesn't mean rights are necessarily being violated. Like buying, I don't know, from Walmart, you would imagine the workers aren't being treated as well as buying from a more high-end boutique store. So again, as long as the workers are getting paid, I don't. Again, it's hard to really make an argument that you're supporting rights violations of somebody when you buy certain clothing.
Hold on, Alex. Alex, you've been talking a lot. Just calm.
Yeah, but he's making real arguments.
Shut up, Sinthe. Shut up.
Neither of you made arguments.
Shut up. I'm talking, Sinthe. Shut the fuck up. I'm talking. You got upset. You got upset. I interrupted you, right?
I got interrupted.
Okay, shut the fuck up. Okay, shut the fuck up.
And you're freaking the fuck out. I'm making fun of you for freaking out.
I'm trying to talk.
It's hilarious.
Shut up.
I know, you're freaking the fuck out.
Vegan gains. You said rights, right?
Yeah.
Don't you take the position that animals violate other animals' rights?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, so given all the argumentation you just had about the good and the bad and ethical and waste and all this stuff, this topical stuff you guys are talking about, the fundamental assumption underneath it that none of you vegans can justify is rights, first of all, for humans, but second, rights for animals. Like, how many of the vegans on the panel tonight are supporting the intervention of animal to animal violence?
So do you think it's a problem when a pit bull attacks a human being?
I didn't ask for a question. I asked you,
right,
do you want to intervene?
I'm going to clarify.
Are you going to answer the question?
Yeah.
Are you going to answer the question?
I am answering it, and I'm making a point right now. So if a pit bull were killing like a child, so a pit bull were mauling a 3-year-old, would you want to intervene in some way?
I would intervene, yes.
Okay. Right. So would I.
Okay, I'm not talking. I said animal. What was my question?
Well,
animal
human
to
beings
animal
are also animals, and if
so what's the meaningful distinction? What's the meaningful distinction between an animal and a human?
If a pit bull were mauling a child, I would want to intervene, and if a pit bull were mauling another dog, I would want to intervene.
How about a crab?
Sure, I suppose.
You're going to intervene. How about you, Kornith? Are you going to intervene with the dog and a crab?
If it was convenient and practical, yeah.
Okay. All of you are going to intervene with dog crab?
If a dog was ripping apart a poodle, I'd want to intervene.
I said crab.
I said crab. I don't care if you said crab. I answered your crab question. You fucking idiot.
The question is crab.
This is brain damage. The question was animal on animal violence. You also asked the crab question. You didn't answer the crab question. The question was if it was convenient. The answer to your question was already given to you by two people already.
No. If it was inconvenient, would you do the moral thing and intervene?
We don't have to.
It's not the moral thing if it's impractical.
We don't have to intervene.
What's practical is moral?
Yes. So you have a practical duty to do what's moral. Yes.
Hold on. No, that's circular. Hold on. That's totally circular.
That's not circular.
Yeah, it is.
Formalize circular. You don't know what circular is.
I'll clarify.
Hold on. Let me respond.
Okay,
go ahead,
my
vegan.
position for you. I don't feel that there's any moral duty to intervene. I think the only moral duty you have is to not violate the rights of others. So if you see a pit bull mauling a 3-year-old, I don't think you have any kind of duty to intervene. But if you do, that's a moral good. But I don't think you have any moral duty to do so.
So you're describing it as a good, but you ought not, or it doesn't matter. There's no ought, you're saying, in your system.
Yeah, in my view, so long as you're not the one attacking the child, then that's fine. But if you're witnessing a rights violation, it's a moral good to intervene, but you don't have to, in my opinion.
Okay,
so I think
and then
that'll clear up some of the things you're asking.
Thank you. And Sinthe, you said what's practical is good, and I said, well, practical is given by goals, right? And goals are arbitrary.
No, goals are not arbitrary.
Goals are not arbitrary?
No, I'm a moral realist. Vegan gains is obstructed. Listen to the answer. Listen to the answer. No, you hold on. Listen to the answer. You ask.
Goals are not arbitrary.
Goals are not arbitrary. You freak out because somebody's answering your question.
Because it's so fucking stupid.
Listen. Everything you said is stupid. You have a double-digit IQ. There's no reason for you to call other people stupid. Listen to the answer to your question. Listen. Yeah, I know you're having trouble tracking because I talk fast and you think slow. So calm down. Listen. Relax. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. You have a whole panel, Jimbob.
Tell me how goals are not.
Jimbob is having the ethics divinely revealed to him on the spot as we speak.
Sinthe, tell me.
Listen, Jimbob, don't ask me to tell you anything. I'm telling you the last answer to your question.
Tell me how goals.
I'm telling you the last answer to your question.
I let it go, guys. I let the exchange go. By the way, I love this shit. We all know we love this shit, but let's back off because now, it's incoherent. People can't understand. Sinthe, we'll start with you. To answer the question, go ahead.
Sure. So the reason why goals are not arbitrary, and the reason why I, as a moral realist, don't think so, is because I don't think that goals can be coherent if they're arbitrary ones. I think that goals have to be grounded in a realist ethic. Now, if you're not a realist, if you have the same position Vegan Gains does, then you can say goals are arbitrary, but Vegan Gains ethics and mine are different. It's just that from a moral realist perspective and from a subjectivist perspective, no matter what your meta ethic is, you should be able to converge on the obviously correct conclusion, which is veganism. Now, and go ahead and ask your next question, Jimbob.
So how are goals not arbitrary?
I just answered this question.
No, you just
use your memory to remember what I just said.
How? You just claimed that they are again.
Because they have to be grounded in a realist ethic. Do you pay attention?
Okay, so my goal, let's take two separate goals.
No, I did answer, just for the record. You asked that question after I already answered it, right?
I need clarification.
Yeah, and it was really stupid of you to do that, right?
Calm down.
I'm pretty calm, right? You've been spazzing the entire debate, right? I'm just bossing you around now because you're a dumbass.
You can't do it.
You're getting piped down because you're getting
the question.
You're getting bitch made by a vegan.
There you go. Just keep avoiding.
You're getting bossed around every time I talk. You pipe down like a bitch.
Are you ready? Are you ready to listen now?
I've been ready this entire debate, but you've got no arguments whatsoever. The only person on your team who's made any arguments whatsoever has been Alex so far. What you've done so far is spazz out and get angry.
You're going to keep it.
I'm not going to let you do anything. I'm not going to let you do anything.
Here we go. So if I have a goal,
I'm letting you. Go ahead.
If I have
I love you, buddy.
If I have a goal that's different than yours, and my goal is to eat meat this week and yours isn't, how is it that these contradictory goals are not arbitrarily developed?
So I don't think that your goal is coherent. I don't think you have a goal there.
Whether something's coherent and whether it's arbitrary are not the same definitions.
Yeah, I didn't say it was.
You just did. Yeah, you just did.
Repeat back to me what I just said.
I just said, how is it my arbitrary?
No, not what you just said. What I just said.
You said because they're not coherent.
You don't remember?
Your goal's not coherent.
No.
That's what you said. Your goal's not coherent.
I'll repeat it back to you again. The reason. Oh, what's up, man? So the reason why it's important that your goal isn't coherent, the reason why I tied that back into the argument that you forgot, is because if your goal is not coherent, then you don't have a goal at all. You have no goal.
What?
There. The only way you can have a goal is to have a coherent one. If what you're saying is incoherent, you're not saying anything at all. You're just making word sounds.
Okay. Can I have a goal to be incoherent? Can I have a goal to be incoherent? As incoherent as possible?
Can you have the goal to be incoherent?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you have the goal? Under what modal scope? Under what modal scope? I
asked you. Under yours.
I'm asking you under. I don't have a modal scope.
Can I have a goal? You can't answer a simple question. I'm
asking you a clarification of your question.
You can't do. Okay. This is a simple question. Can I have a goal to be incoherent this week?
Go ahead and answer the question that I just asked you as a clarification of that.
Is it a modal scope? Is it a modal scope?
I didn't ask you, is it a modal scope?
Just answer the fucking question, dude.
I don't know what your question is.
Can we get
clarification?
How do you not know the question? Can I have a goal?
Because I need clarification. Can you logically? Can you physically? Physically, you can have a goal. Logically, you can have a goal.
Can I have
morally,
a goal?
no, you can't have a goal. Morally, no, you can't have the goal to be incoherent.
I didn't ask morally. I said.
Yeah, that's why I asked you to clarify the modal scope. You didn't clarify the modal scope. That's why I asked you, dummy.
Can I have a goal to be completely logically inconsistent this week?
You just asked that question several times in a row.
And what's the
answered
answer?
your question.
Is it a yes or a no?
I just told you I gave you a bunch of different modals, dumbass. Under a bunch of different modal scopes that you could have been using.
I can't answer if I can tell you.
I gave you the answer to your question.
It's a yes
want
or
to clarify?
no.
I gave you 3 yes or no's depending on what you meant, dumbass.
Enough. We're not getting anywhere here.
Fucking idiot.
With this
Brain damage,
right?
moron.
But we're not getting anywhere
Can I
here.
ask a
Hang on.
question to shift it somewhere?
Yeah,
ahead,
sure.
go
And then
ahead.
can I go after Posh? Yeah.
Okay, so can I ask the vegan side, do you season your food?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Why?
to make it taste better.
tastes good.
All right, are you aware of the fact that you need entire industries and transport and all sorts of, industries to produce these, and that you are damaging the planet and are also bringing, depending on what type of seasoning you use, bringing all sorts of animals to the peril of death. You're condemning them to death. If you use sugar, especially, you're going to need a lot of agriculture, and that's never good for a whole host of animals. So why would you not sacrifice seasoning?
Is every argument you guys are going to make just going to be too quoque that like every
Are
single
you going to dodge every fucking thing we say?
Hang on.
Yeah,
Jimbob, it's like you haven't made any arguments.
I just let him ask.
It's not a too quoque because I don't feel condemned by your condemnation. So I'm saying, why wouldn't you apply what you're doing?
What?
Yeah, so we're
So
not.
what I'm saying is,
So I can answer that.
okay.
So
Go ahead.
I'm not a consequentialist. It's entirely possible that, say, something you do could produce more harm. Doesn't necessarily you're violating rights. So say
It necessarily produces harm, doesn't it?
well, no, I wouldn't even say it necessarily produces harm. But
Cultivating sugar does not
something-
necessarily kill animals.
well, no, it doesn't necessarily. It very likely will end up killing some animals through some sort of process of manufacturing, but I don't consider those deaths
Or
rights
transport.
violations. Yeah, I don't consider those deaths rights violations.
How
What's the
so?
difference? What's the difference to the cow if it was murdered through accident, or was like if it it's still dead?
Yeah, the
No, it's
difference
not
to the
even by
cow-
accident. Sorry, Alex. Sorry. I'm sorry. But,
Posh, let
it's
vegan answer
not-
the question. You guys just constantly
but-
talk
but
over the
I-
other side and complain you're getting interrupted. Pipe down, Posh.
Calm
Let vegan
down.
answer.
Calm down.
Pipe down. It'll be okay. Let the other side answer.
So
You're right,
incidental
but I want to
death.
say,
So
I don't
incidental
agree with
exchange.
Alex's qualification. It's not accidental. It's a necessary consequence of having industry and transport.
I worded
It's
that
not
incorrectly.
accidental. It's a
Well,
necessary.
okay.
It's not direct, but it's indirect.
Wait,
That's what-
Indirect,
So
indirect
I
is correct.
want to clarify. I want you to clarify. When humans get killed from crossing the street and getting hit by a car, is that an intentional death?
No, I'm saying indirect. So I'm saying if you
Indirect,
get
that's it.
incredibly drunk and start driving, you are putting people in danger.
Sure.
But even that does not necessarily result in the death of animals. But agriculture does result in the death of animals.
Well,
so why not
driving
minimize
results in the death of
agriculture?
people. So,
Gentlemen,
like,
hang
would
on
that
one
same
second.
principle apply?
One second. I have to point something out. Posh just lost 5-man points because he got smoke eye. I had to point that out. I saw that, Posh. You didn't get it past me, fucker. Anyway, go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
Fenian. But also, I'm saying, yes, with transport, you will get human deaths.
Yeah.
But not necessarily. But you will necessarily get death from agriculture, animal death from agriculture.
Okay.
You need pesticides. You need to keep away all sorts of pests.
Yeah, I don't see a
including
problem with that.
Cute, fluffy ones.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't see how that's
why
a
not?
rights violation.
I think Posh is actually making an interesting point that I haven't thought about. What is you guys don't want direct animal deaths, which I understand from your philosophy why you don't want that, but it seems like you're completely okay with indirect animal deaths that are not necessary, because for something like spices or sugar, you don't have to eat that, right? Let's not.
For the sake of taste buds, by the way.
Yeah, it's just so you're not okay with people killing animals
Spices
directly.
do have health benefits, so you could
Okay,
argue.
let's take sugar, something that you do not need to put in your diet. So you're not okay with people killing animals to please their taste buds directly, but if they're doing it like they're buying sugar and that kills animals, that's okay. Like, I don't understand what's the difference.
Yeah.
if the
So
cows
again, in one instance, some of these deaths are going to be with pesticides. So I would just consider that as protecting property from you could say what is equivalent to a burglar. The only practical way to deal with certain insects is to, again, use pesticides. There are some pesticides used against like birds, but they don't actually kill. They just taste bad to the birds. They have like some weird grape flavor that birds don't like. I know that's a pesticide that's commonly used.
Vegan, none of that answers the question. If all you vegans, you stopped eating sugar, you could save a lot of animals.
Yeah, again,
Yes,
I don't
that's my
consider
point.
those deaths a rights violation, and there is such thing as veganic farming. It's not very common right now, but it is a method of farming that eliminates animal deaths. I would like to use something like that in the future. Sorry?
Sure. But what's the difference between the cow?
Yes, how
Yeah,
do they avoid animal death?
so they just use different methods. There are like sometimes it's a complete enclosure, so animals literally cannot get to whatever's being grown. So when you don't need to use something like pesticides, you don't have any animals get into the plant. So when you like harvest them, no like field animals could get killed. There are things like that.
Right.
Ideally,
But-
we would use that sort of farming, but again, I'm not a consequentialist. I would prefer that sort of farming be used because it would reduce deaths. So that would be a moral good, but I consider it morally neutral if animals do die from incidental deaths on a farm. So I don't consider those deaths rights violations. So I don't have a problem with it.
All right.
I'm having a hard time understanding. what
Sorry,
the
just
difference
let me
is.
finish my line of argumentation. I'm sorry, Alex.
No, go ahead.
But you're also implementing a lot of industry when it comes to processing, sugar and salt and all the other spices, and transport, which require fossil fuels. If not so, then electricity, which also needs to be produced and is also problematic for, depending on what type, can also cause a lot of harm. In fact, does cause a lot of harm to the environment. So again, it would seem to me that if you wish to be consistent, you would wish to minimize any type of animal death unless it's necessary. And this is completely unnecessary. It is merely for the sake of pleasure.
Yeah, you're not understanding my ethical values. I just told you I don't consider these deaths rights violations. It would be a moral good to say, I guess, not buy certain spices at least, like sugar, because you would reduce like transport deaths or something like that. But I don't consider these rights violations. So what I am a deontologist. I don't really focus on the consequence of my actions. I just think about not violating the rights of others. And since I don't see how I'm violating the rights of others, I just don't see these
if industrialists refuse to put certain filters on their plants, and that causes damage to the surrounding population, you would not see that as a problem.
So, yeah, that could be considered a rights violation if the degree of harm gets to a point where it could be considered a violation of rights. You could argue. So there are standards for industry to put smokestacks at a certain height, to use filters on emissions, stuff like that.
Some plants,
something like
plants
that.
around.
But again, some like these sorts of things are things that are going to be controlled with regulation, not from boycott.
But again, you're sort of saying you want the government to do it. I understand that. But on the other hand, I'm saying it's superfluous. It's completely unnecessary. And if you wish to make an exception for medical reasons, then you can do that. But you're sort of saying, no, it's generally acceptable and one should not care about the consequences. No, if I want to open a plant and it's very profitable for me and I treat my employees well, so be it if people around in the neighborhood, suffer all sorts of, get all sorts of diseases from being exposed to the toxins.
Sorry, what type of plant are we talking about?
Any type of industrial plant,
Okay.
you can have. So, for example, not very near, but not too far away from my home city, there's a pesticide plant.
Okay.
And you can imagine that's not a particularly healthy place to live around.
I've not seen any evidence that pesticide exposure is harmful to humans, but if we're talking about industrial plants that pose health risks to humans, The biggest one would probably be animal agriculture, especially pig farms. So they they literally spray shit into the air. People who are
Posh, let me squeeze one question in because I think it goes directly in your point. So I'm a little confused. Why is an animal dying from a burger, for me or Posh eating a burger, worse than an animal dying from manufacturing sugar? Either way, that animal right to life was violated. So why is the burger death worse than the sugar death?
So if you look at the amount of deaths that occurred from traffic accidents, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40,000 in the United States per year. So you would only need a few decades to actually match the amount of deaths in the Holocaust. So do you think there's a difference between the murders in the Holocaust versus the road accidents, the deaths from road accidents?
Can we just use a different word than that? Whatever.
Not that you can tell us.
Whatever different word you want.
We can use the word.
Burnt offering.
Yeah.
Because most of the deaths from car accidents, unless someone was drunk, were unavoidable. It was like an accident, something happened. Versus sugar, can absolutely be avoided, right? It's not necessary for you to eat sugar. It's probably better that you don't. So oil is 100% avoidable.
So no, I don't know how you can make that claim. Like again, there's 30 to 40,000 traffic deaths per year. I don't know how you could claim that's all of those are avoidable.
I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying a good amount of them are unavoidable. And the ones where someone is drunk, that's why we put those people to jail if they drink and drive, right?
Well,
we look at people who drink and drive, and we're like, hey, that's wrong, and you're going to go to jail for that.
Yeah. Again, what type of deaths are you talking about? Like to produce sugar? Like what exactly are you talking about?
I'm just piggybacking on what Posh Redneck said. I don't know specifically.
But like, are we talking about from pesticides? Are we talking about like mechanical harvesting equipment, killing an animal? Like, what are we talking about?
Why would it matter? The cow is dead and it could have been avoided.
Okay, like the one requires the explicit rights of the animal to be taken away, and they're getting systematically bred into existence and then murdered, versus an incidental death where the animal could have moved out of the way. They could have chosen some other food source.
Hang on. We're not talking about someone running into an animal. We're talking about cows or animals, whatever animals they use, being used in like doing like fucking 20 hours a day of like manual work and carrying big loads and then dying from that. We're not talking
harvest sugar.
We're not talking about accidents.
Well, hang on, guys. Wait. Alex, you two, listen. Because it's kind of become a bit of a 2v1 pile-on, please give Vegan Gains a chance to answer your questions before you give follow-up questions. Go ahead, Vegan Gains.
Yeah, so I just want you to clarify what deaths in the sugar industry you're talking about. So are we talking about deaths from pesticide use? Are we talking about deaths from mechanical farming equipment running over an animal? Are we talking about sugar being transported? So
I think Posh can answer that question better because I was just piggybacking off his point.
So any of those, but we're not talking about you having a garden to sustain yourself, right? We're talking about that's why I specifically mentioned spices. Sure. I'm not going to say why do you have potatoes, right? You need to eat something lest you die. So that's why I'm saying, if you're going to have sugar, I could also say, why do you fry your food? If you fry your food, you need to get oil. If you want to have oil, you need to get plants to extract the oil from. And you also have the same problem, right? If you just boiled your food and not seasoned it, you would have a far smaller impact on your environment. A lot fewer animals would die.
Yeah.
And you would still not lose anything in terms of sustenance.
I understand.
Only taste and preference.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying, and I already answered. I'm not a consequentialist. So I'm not looking to reduce the amount of harm I'm committing to the absolute greatest extent. I am only trying to avoid violating the rights of other beings. So if I buy sugar from a factory that got their sugar from a plant that uses mechanical farming equipment that, I don't know, ran over a rabbit, I don't consider that a rights violation. That's just an incidental death similar to a death that you'd maybe see in a traffic accident.
Okay, but
Do you
if
think
we
that-
wish to analogize it to a traffic accident, would you remove breathalyzers, for example, and punishing people for driving drunk?
No.
Where's the
Because
connection
I
there?
would
There's just no
consider that a
entailment.
rights violation through clear actions you committed. You were driving so dangerously to where your actions basically practically intentionally caused a death.
But that's what I'm saying. You're doing something completely unnecessary and endangering other living beings.
Well,
and you people
no.
would have a much closer understanding of the value of humans and animals. If you wish, non-human animals. I'm trying to be very colloquial about it. But why?
Yeah. So
Why?
again,
Why?
yeah,
I
so-
know it increases the chance, and that would be the same thing
I
with
think-
you wanting
I think-
agriculture for pleasure.
Yeah, so again, I think I've answered this well enough, and if you can't understand, I think we should just move on. Again,
right.
if you were to say get into a car, drive drunk, or drive blindfolded, that sort of action is so negligent that you could argue the outcome of that is intentional. The chances of you running somebody over, getting into an accident, or killing somebody are so high, and your actions are so negligent that the reason we consider that criminal is because that action basically intentionally led to harm or death. Again, if you were farming and it's for the purpose of like producing food or producing sugar or what have you, any agricultural product, that's not negligence. So if an animal were, say, in like the bushes or something, not moving out of the way of mechanized farming equipment, it's not really the person's fault. There's no like act of negligence on their part. So I don't consider that a rights violation.
Why not say the same thing about humans not moving out of the way of a car coming out?
Well, certainly, if it's
Yeah, if somebody's
dark at
jaywalking,
night-
vegan gays would say that.
Yeah, so
I understand, but also drunk people run over people who are on the pavement, not necessarily even on...
Which is to vegan gains' point. That's why that's wrong. Right? Why
exactly,
you're
but-
violating
but-
people's rights by being drunk. Or you're not tracking at all. You're violating somebody's rights by being drunk.
I understand,
But you're not violating
but-
somebody's rights by not being drunk and just driving your car normally.
If you reduced the area you needed for agriculture, a lot fewer animals...
Well, yeah, you would.
find
And again,
themselves in
if
a
you're going to use that
predicament
argument...
where they would be destroyed by mechanized
Yeah,
farming
so
equipment.
we could use less agricultural land than we use today if we move to a completely plant-based food system. We'd be able to...
And
use
even
at least
further,
4 times
if you
less
gave
land.
up on sugar and oil...
No, I don't
How
see
no?
how that would be the
How
case
no?
because those are calorie sources. And
right, but it's
It doesn't matter for
extremely
solar animals, but
Anything
never
is
mind.
bad for you.
You don't need sugar.
Well, you don't need any particular
It's bad
food.
for you. No, you
can
do
make
need
that
Exactly, but
protein.
you
Gentlemen,
don't
gentlemen.
need
You need
sugar.
vitamins.
Hang on,
nutrients. Yeah.
gentlemen. Listen, we're
false
an
opinion.
hour in. I'm going to move the topic along
Yeah.
so that we can get to some of these other kind of segments here. Okay, we are going to move this back into ethics a little bit later in the debate. I promise all of you that. In about a half hour, we'll move into that. But for now, kind of staying within the line, this is something which does come up. And again, this is a broad topic. Kornith, you need to shut the fuck up. You've been talking way too much tonight, and I'm sick of you already. Now, moving into this, try to understand that one of the huge things which is very contentious here, and I've heard this many times from Kornith, is kind of this field death operation around animals. Is it really more merciful to the animals, based on, this type of cropping and sharecropping and things like this? This is a good segue, I think, into that particular topic, considering that we started with the spices. I'm going to let the vegan side open. Kornith, who has not shut up the entire night, we're going to start with you, and let's kind of see where this goes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so when we're talking about things like moles, voles, and roly poles getting torn apart by the tractors, it's generally going to be necessary either on a carnivore system or a vegan system. So if we're looking at through consequentialism, it's not going to lower the necessary amount of deaths by just saying you're being vegan. And that's the issue that this criticism generally runs into. You need to end up starting to implement systems of entirely going onto pasture-raised farming and or grass-raised farming, and that's generally just not the case that we end up being seen, and it's just used as a tu quoque fallacy.
But Kornith, do you not see the point of me bringing up spices specifically because you don't need them. You don't need.
We're
salt.
not consequentialists.
Yes, you do need.
No, I am.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
There's a difference in the views between the.
I've asked Kornith just to hear his perspective. I've heard yours. We disagree, but I've heard it.
Okay.
So I'd like to hear his. So do you not see why I mention things like sugar, things like oil? Right here in Eastern Europe, the basic source of oil is sunflower seeds. Right? We get a lot of fields of sunflowers. If we only boiled our food, we wouldn't need any of those.
The consequentialist argument is just as simple as the consequentialist argument is just as simple as the threshold deontologist. Just that the amount of good that you get from things like sugar are going to outweigh the very small amounts of damage that you've done.
What
in terms of listen. The very small amounts of damage that you incur on those animals, the benefits you get are obvious. They taste good, right? The good taste of sugar is very likely even to be outweighing whatever good is going to happen on those animals' lives. It's not clear to me that the animals in the wild have net positive lives. I think that the average life of a roly-poly being digested in someone else's stomach acid at the end of its life or starving to death if it's lucky, that doesn't seem very good to me. It might be a much worse death than just getting eaten and mulled away by a tractor. If you're a hardcore act utilitarian consequentialist and not a threshold deontologist like Vegan Gains is, then it's the case that under those systems, it's still going to be justified.
But
it's just as justified.
Why
Because his life would be miserable otherwise.
I also want to point out if you actually look at data calculating field animal deaths, it's shockingly low. Like practically zero animals die from mechanized farming equipment. They usually actually die from getting predated upon. And what's interesting too is if you're talking about grass-fed, pasture-raised animals, that actually ends up killing a lot of field animals because cows, goats, these grazing animals will eat certain grasses that a lot of animals use for shelter and cover from, say, like birds or snakes. And then when those grasses are eaten away, they can't hide in these fields anymore, and then they get eaten more by other predatory animals.
I understand, but that's not my point. What I'm doing is making an internal critique. I don't care, to be perfectly honest.
Sure.
We can get to why I don't care that cows, graze on more insects than you would otherwise. What I'm saying is you don't really need. That's why I'm focusing on things you don't need.
I think we can, maybe clear this up from both the consequentialist and deontological, argument we're having here. Do you have any evidence whatsoever that fewer animals die as a result of not having this agricultural land? Because I'm not even convinced that fewer animals die on, I don't know, a square mile of sugar field versus a square mile of wilderness.
I just
have any evidence of that?
I'm saying you're not actually. Sorry, Alex. I'll just say this: you're not intervening in the wilderness. You're not doing
answer the question, though, right? Do you have any evidence?
Yes.
If it makes no difference.
To be honest, I'm not sure that anyone's ever studied square mile of nothing.
I just quickly looked it up, and this has been studied. And yes, I looked into sugar farming, and yes, sugar farming, which a lot of it is done in the Amazon, does kill a lot of animals.
That's not the question.
Yeah, but versus wildlife. So a lot of these animals are predated upon.
More than wildlife, which is why a lot of these animals are now endangered.
But if they're endangered, that means less deaths are happening. So that doesn't make much sense. You'd have to say that there are more populations, that's more death. If it's the case, there's a constant population to be the same number of deaths.
What?
No, if there is a constant population, the same number of deaths.
Yes,
the animals die in the wild.
If you commit genocide, there's going to be fewer and fewer people to genocide.
Yeah, if you have a genocide, if you have a genocide that's happening because of the fact that you're killing them, that would work. If it's the case that you're having a genocide because there's less land for them to breed on, it no longer works as an argument anymore. You can't say there's more deaths caused.
Alex, wait, I think you're misunderstanding. The data that I need, I want you to calculate the total amount of deaths that are happening within a given field versus the amount of deaths happening within a given same square area of wilderness.
But there's also no such thing as a field.
I don't think I can do a study on that. I just want to quickly address what Sinthe is saying. So what happens is when the animal becomes a danger, a lot of them die, the government jumps in and starts protecting them, right? So then it becomes a little bit of a different, the government doesn't protect the animals when there's a bunch of them. They start protecting them when there's like barely any left.
Right,
So
sure, but I don't see any particular reason to believe that more animals are dying within a square mile of like sugarcane field versus a square mile of wilderness. Because a lot of these animals that are dying, they're either insects that only live like maybe a month or two anyway, or they're these field animals like, I don't know, rabbits or something that, again, don't live very long either. They usually get predated upon or suffer from like some sort of disease or something. So where's the evidence that more animals are even dying in these fields?
Yeah, I can post some articles, but do you like intuitively think that if like scenario number one, like the wild in the Amazon stays as is. Scenario two, the sugarcane plantation comes in and gets like 100 acres and like whatever, puts like fertilizer and all that shit in there. Do you think really that both of them are going to be the same in terms of animals deaths? You don't think that a fucking sugar farm?
I have no idea what I would assume they're going to be different. I have no idea if it's less or more deaths, right? That's what I'm asking you. Let's just ask the question directly. If I buy a pound of sugar from the store, how many more animals were killed as opposed to if I didn't buy that pound of sugar?
I don't think there's a good answer to that, but I can post some articles that say that.
Do you have a rough estimate?
This is outside my area of expertise.
Is this like a Steven?
Does anybody on the other side have an area?
No, because as I said, there is no such thing as a field because you can go into a meadow.
No, I didn't ask a field. I'm asking pound of sugar.
Deforestation.
No, I was asking for if I buy 1 pound of sugar versus if I don't, how many more animals die?
Okay, so here's a quote. In the last 11 years, sugarcane production has increased. There's no official data concerning animals killed in this process.
Who wrote the article? Who wrote the article?
Explain. Let me just finish. As I will explain below, we can estimate that thousands, even millions of animals have been killed directly and indirectly by sugarcane.
Yeah, I think this is the what's the original source and who wrote the paper?
Oh my God!
It's also
I think it's the Stephen Davies article. It was actually debunked and it's wrong.
It's called it's Dr. Carlo Guterres.
Okay, that's not the original source. Where are you finding this?
I can post the link. It's called fanalytics.org.
Okay, so this might get around to a dance too.
If you want to put that in the private chat, I'll put it up so that they can all have access to it.
Right, but let's say hypothetically, we could prove that more animals die.
More than what?
Would you therefore, if you ate sugar, right, for your pound of sugar, if that contributed, because we all know that's not how actually economies work. We talk about demand and
you just need to know the
supply.
cumulative. Yeah, you just need to know the CEV. Just give me the CEV of a pound of sugar in terms of animal deaths caused. Right? Just give me the cumulative elasticity.
If we can prove that, would you then change?
If you could prove how much, it depends, right? If you say that like one roly-poly died in a bag of sugar, then I think it's probably the case that on utilitarian grounds, more good comes out of that bag of sugar in terms of taste.
I don't see how pleasure is a good outside of personal preference.
Yeah, you disagree. You're making an internal critique. It doesn't matter what you think, right? You're making an internal critique. You said.
Okay, but
so how many animals would need to die per pound of sugar?
Yes.
If a cow died per pound of sugar, then I would be like, that's pretty bad. If a human died per pound of sugar, I'd be like, that's like insanely bad.
Okay.
So it just depends on which animal. Depends on how.
Animals.
I know it depends on which animal. Humans are a type of animal. Cows are a type of animal. Pigs are a type of animals. Roly-polies are a type of animals. Some are more valuable to me than others.
How many insects would need to die?
It would depend on the insects, but if you say like a roly-poly, quite a lot. And it wouldn't be.
I actually don't know what a roly-poly.
How many roly-polies need to die for you to stop eating sugar?
So
if you told me that a billion roly-polies died, I'd stop eating sugar.
No one's actually provided evidence that more animals are actually dying due to sugarcane production.
I just posted an article.
Than otherwise would say in the wild. And again, that's not an original source. That's just an article on blog.
So what would you say on direct involvement?
Sorry?
Like, what kind of source do you need to see?
What would you say with the critique of direct involvement? Like
what?
It doesn't matter. Like, if humans didn't exist, all types of animals would die, right?
Sure.
But there's no argument here anymore. Like, if you can't answer how many animals are going to die from a pound of sugar, even having an approximate answer, if you can't give me an estimate, then there's just no argument at all you guys have. You're just asking a bunch of weird, irrelevant hypotheticals, like how many would need to die. Like, I don't know, like a billion would be enough, one wouldn't be.
Directly involved in the deaths of these animals.
Yeah, so again, I can answer that.
If you run over a person,
so yeah, I personally can answer that. Yeah,
okay,
even if we're directly involved in the deaths, I don't consider us committing a rights violation, and especially when you consider like no one's provided sufficient evidence that more deaths are even occurring as a result of us, growing sugarcane. I especially have a lack of interest because, yeah, I might have an interest in preventing deaths, but if I make an effort to boycott sugarcane and try to reduce the amount of sugarcane being made, and that wouldn't even attain the goal I have of reducing deaths, why would I have an interest in doing it?
Okay, what kind of evidence would you need to see? You didn't like my article, so what kind of evidence would you need to see?
So first of all, I want you to provide original sources. What you did was you provided an article written by an anonymous author, I think. There wasn't an author mentioned.
No, his name is like right at the top.
Well, okay, well, let me see. In his blog, so this is just a blog article. This is his opinion, and he links references, but I want to see original sources. So the original source would be some of the evidence. So yeah, some of the original sources would be the evidence like that is maybe linked in the article. But if you're going to use original sources, like I think all of you, if you're going to make this argument, you just need to spend more time researching and bring together the data, because what the evidence we need is you need to show the deaths actually caused by the agriculture, and you need to compare that to the deaths that would be existing within a comparable
I honestly never imagined that this would be up for dispute, but why don't you just click on the sources that are in the article and you can see exactly where he gets his information from.
Well, you haven't vetted the information. Like, just provide the original sources.
Like, do you need me to hold your hand?
I'm not like
you provide the studies for your own side.
Hang on.
You're not holding anyone's hands. Just source your argument.
Alex, if he's asking for the original sources, and your article does link to the original sources, it is fair for him to ask for you to link those original sources in the private chat so he can review them. There's nothing wrong with him requesting that.
Well, like, I'm not going to click on every link in this article and then scroll through. And honestly, I don't think it's
I will copy and paste. I'll do manual labor and copy and paste those lists. I feel like that's a way of getting out of engaging, because it's so easy to click on a link.
I understand where you are, Alex, but so let me ask you, because let's say hypothetically we all adopted veganism and we all lived for 300 years and we're all 7 feet tall. So our population expands and we need to start deforesting. Do we go ahead and doing that for oil and sugar?
Do you understand that we have to? Okay, this is an insane wacky hypothetical. You don't understand that we already have to do that for animal agriculture. It takes more hold on, listen. It takes more calories in plants to feed the animals than feed that food to us than it would just feed the plant matter directly.
To be fair,
that's a logical thing. But that's what I'm saying. It's an internal critique for the sake of saying, would you then stop it if it required deforestation?
Yeah, so again, if the human population increased to an adequate degree, I wouldn't necessarily be against it, because again, deforesting doesn't necessarily violate the rights of these animals, and it could actually be beneficial. So there is probably more suffering that occurs within a square mile of wilderness versus a square mile of city. So I think there would maybe be an interest in reducing
so if I had a square mile chicken coop and have my chickens running around being all happy, and I just ate the eggs, I didn't even kill them for the meat.
Well, that's an extremely detached sort of hypothetical.
Why?
Well, in normal chicken, like in normal agriculture, if you're producing eggs, you have
I didn't ask about industrial. I'm asking for myself. If I personally did.
Well, you're currently getting the explanation for why it's detached from reality, right? Which is reality is the industrial agriculture. You and your personal hypothetical with the chicken eggs.
My chicken eggs. And
if you personally. Well, now you've once again attached it from your hypothetical by saying you also get meat, right? You're like,
So chickens only really lay eggs for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 years. Then their egg laying either falls off completely or it becomes extremely rare. And again, you're either going to spend time and resources tending to chickens that don't produce any food for you, or you're going to kill and eat them.
You're not engaging in a hypothetical at all.
Isn't it better than all the deaths that
I'm explaining why it's not better.
Mile?
No, so you have to feed these chickens something, and that requires
they feed themselves.
They're not going to.
I have a square mile of that.
Chickens are very easy to maintain, by the way. Chickens are very easy.
Extremely.
They can't completely feed themselves. And secondly,
and is it worse than letting them out? I mean, what's going to happen? A hawk taking their neck off? Live.
I don't know. What
is that death better? Or
trying to ask.
Let's say you have 10 acres.
I'm saying, what's better, being locked up and being an egg provider, or just letting them free? I mean, I don't understand the argument. Didn't you say?
I'm being asked. I'm being asked.
Aren't you arguing about rights? Aren't you arguing about rights?
Yeah. Well, I would rather argue about rights actually. So I again.
Okay,
rather than talking about sugarcane and chickens, let's get back to what we were talking about before. I think we got sidetracked, and we were talking about this right at the very beginning of the debate. So could you name, we asked you to name the trait that's lacking in animals that if lacking in humans would justify killing humans. I believe the trait named was being human. So, and it was defined as being part of the genus Homo.
Homo sapiens sapiens.
Okay, what is it meant by Homo sapiens?
Can we get an answer to the chicken egg question? Like, what is I still haven't gotten an answer.
You guys just always want to pivot away from this.
I don't know, and I don't care.
No, we want to go into this.
No, I'd be happy to answer all your questions right after this.
There is some you look, if what you want is there's some
Guys, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut in, and I've let this very spirited debate continue to go wherever you guys wanted to take it. However, Vegan Gains did say, and we were going to begin to transition into this segment anyway of ethics, that he wanted to discuss rights. I think that's totally fair, and that's where we're going to kind of move into from here, Alex. So let's start with that, and this time I'll start with the Kornith side for their inquiry. I've started with the vegan side almost every time this debate. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
Andrew,
first of all, hold on. Let me go.
Hang on. Alex, what's on your mind?
Will I be able to have 10 minutes to talk about the health side of it later on?
Yeah, we're going to get into the health side as well.
I'd rather die.
I know that this feels brutal back and forth. It's kind of supposed to, right? But we're only an hour and 20 minutes in, guys. We still have plenty of debate left. Yeah, we still have plenty of debate left. We're going to start with the Kornith side. Go ahead, guys.
So the whole concept of rights, right? To ask the question, what's distinct about a human being and an animal such that the human beings have some sort of priority? To ask the question is to assume that we have priority, because whatever the answer is, you're giving us some sort of superior position in the matter. So first, would we agree we're all speciesists, that we think humans are superior and we value humans above all other animals?
I don't value it on the basis of species, no.
Yeah,
on the basis of what, then?
Species. I value it on the basis of individual merit.
Individual. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
So I'm not going to value any particular human above any particular cow. If there's a human that's less intelligent, less morally good in my view than a cow, so I value a cow more than Hitler. I might value a cow more than somebody with a severe mental disability that's only going to live for 2 or 3 years. So I value people or animals based on their own individual characteristics, not based on what species they belong to.
Aren't you still taking the superior position of what we ought to do with animals in that regard?
What is meant by that?
If you made that claim and now you're making choices about the cow, you're still assuming some sort of superior position.
No, not necessarily. Rights have to be granted, I acknowledge that, but I don't know what makes me superior to the cow necessarily.
Well, because we're talking about ethical positions on how we ought to treat or not treat animals.
Sure.
And animals aren't doing that. Therefore, we're the ones making choices and determining policy and law and rights, which, by the way, are human construction. So animals don't have that. So if we were to determine rights about animals, you would agree that we're still necessarily valuing humans above all animals, given that we're determining what rights are for animals.
No, we're not necessarily valuing humans above animals by doing that, but I don't see why it would matter either way. Again, I believe in the principle of human rights, and it just seems logically consistent to me to include animals in the human rights code.
And the consequence of animals having rights would be that you would actually, in some instances, intervene with animal-to-animal rights violations.
Yeah, certainly. Like if I saw a pit bull attacking a human, or if I saw a pit bull attacking another dog, or if I saw like a pit bull or a wolf or a coyote, I don't know, attacking a turtle or something, then yeah, sure.
What about a mouse?
Yeah, sure.
Is there an animal? Is there an animal we can go down the line and suddenly it doesn't apply? Or
so other carnivorous animals I might not intervene. So if a dog was attacking a coyote, I would probably see that as a net good because it's a carnivore killing another carnivore. Insects, so like anteaters. The difference in sentience to me is just so massive between like an anteater and the ants or whatever insects it's eating. I think I would just allow an anteater to eat insects, especially since ants are also carnivorous too. But even assuming they had non-carnivorous insect prey, the sentience gap is so massive.
Would you count insectivores as carnivores?
Yeah.
So mice.
Well, there's no such thing as insectivore. You're either a carnivore, or herbivore, or omnivore.
Okay, so that's what I asked actually. Yeah. So mice aren't worth protecting, therefore, and nor are chickens, by the way.
Yeah, it depends on what type of mice or rodent you're talking about. There are omnivorous or carnivorous rodents, and there's ones that are herbivorous.
Well, they eat each other as well, so...
Yeah, I know some, like, mice parents will eat their babies. I know that happens.
With cats and dogs as well.
Well, I don't know how common that is in the wild. I know that is something that's observed only in captivity, at least in some species. But, yeah, To clear this up, I'm only interested in killing carnivorous animals if it would lead to fewer rights violations. There are certain circumstances where it would actually lead to a greater number of rights violations. So I think that might resolve some of the questions you ask.
Actually, hold on. That's a good question. Like the question is like, take an animal that kills a lot of other animals. And would it actually follow that if you just completely annihilated the animal, that it would reduce? If it was the case, Vegan Gains, if you annihilated bears, let's say, or put them in jail, and you knew it would reduce all of the carnage that they deploy on other animals, would you enact such a thing? Would you either eliminate them or put them in jail?
Yeah. So assuming it would,
can you say bear jail?
Well, the idea would be to just keep them in captivity and feed them like vegan cat food or something.
Right. Yeah.
You could call it jail, sure, but
like a nice jail, like a nice vegan jail.
Yeah.
Do you think that Jimbob? Do you think that zoos are jails?
Scandinavian jail.
No, I want to answer my question. Is a zoo a jail, Jimbob?
A zoo? No, it's not a jail.
Wait, but you're keeping all the animals there. Isn't it like an animal jail?
No, that's rhetorical. That's what's funny. That's why I wanted him to.
Stupid. Yeah, it's fucking stupid.
No, it's funny. Bear jail is funny to me.
It's funny to you. Right? You thought it was a reductio in the View, and it's just
no. I didn't actually. I didn't say it was a reductio.
I would actually.
I have an arbitrary goal.
Zoological garden.
Okay.
So it's a
Thank you,
goal.
Posh. You really helped the argument there.
So to get back to the name the trait question, what do you mean by Homo sapien sapien?
Humans.
So
Modern humans.
right, but you said Homo sapien sapien. Homo sapien is the species, but you added sapien again. Like there's two sapiens there. What does that mean?
No, modern humans is Homo sapiens sapiens.
Oh,
So that's the subspecies you're thinking of, Posh. The species is Homo sapiens, right? Homo sapiens sapiens is like a subspecies that some taxonomists recognize and some don't, right?
Yes,
But if you
yes,
do recognize
okay,
it,
fair
what
enough.
we're asking you is what is it makes that category? Because the species there's a line around Ernst Marx's species concept is a line, but for listen for the subspecies we want to know what's the line around that.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, the greatest difference is the ability to argue, the ability to communicate on the level that humans can. But also,
No, I'm not asking you the differences. I'm asking you the definition. Like if somebody couldn't argue, they'd still be part of the species.
If they are defective members of the species, they are an outlier. But
Yeah,
for
but what's the
same
definition
reason-
of the Homo sapiens sapiens?
I am actually not sure.
okay.
So
The definition of Homo sapiens, I'll give you.
Problem.
Go ahead.
If
If
you're
you'd
not-
like to,
yeah, we really need clarity on what the trait is, because if you can't define it, then we can't really.
as I know you mean name the trait, but what my argument is basically, sorry, on the same level of saying I'd rather save my brother than a different human being who's not related to me in any way, shape, or form.
Right, but like again,
Even if they're on the.
But we can all tell you what our brother is. The brother is the guy. The brother is the guy who comes from the same mom and dad as you do, or mom or dad as you do.
I mean, I think the
understand.
definition game is like, can I get a few questions in? Just, I don't have that much. So as a quick side note, I do agree with you, Sinthe, about zoos being jails. The solution is wildlife sanctuaries. That's a much more ethical way of going about it. Okay, the main thing that I was going to say is this. I guess one thing that I kind of find odd, it seems that vegans are really concerned about the rights of animals, which is good. But when it comes to other humans who they agree are higher consciousness, they seem to not care nearly as much. Like, Sinthe, you were saying you wouldn't pay more for the ethical t-shirt company because it costs more. So
I
then
think it's bad for the people. Well, no, the issues, I think it's actually bad for the people who work in the sweatshops to boycott it. If you boycott sweatshops, I don't think that's effective. I think the effective strategy is to make sure the governments in these countries are treating their workers fairly with regulations, not by boycotting people who work in bad industries.
As an American, you have no say what happens in India. So, okay, so by your logic...
No, we do. Wait, hold on. That's not true at all. So America is currently, we don't live in a multipolar world quite yet, right? We might in the future, but currently we don't. America is the global hegemon, right? We have complete control over a lot of aspects of global culture. We can do a lot economically. If it's the case, we vote for a person who says something like, I'm going to stop the sweatshops in the third world. They can actually make some really large impacts there. So we as Americans do have a large impact on those other countries through their regulations. We do have that.
Okay, you by yourself will not change any kind of policy in India. But so, okay, so I don't want to get...
Well, that's not true either, right? You as an individual citizen can canvass, you can door knock, you can get involved in local politics.
You're going to go to India and you're going to door knock? So my question
No, we
was
don't have to
this.
door knock in India. We can door knock right here in the U.S. And like so recently, there's been like a local congressional race here in the U.S. right in my state of Rhode Island, right? And I did door knocking campaigns for the local politicians because that's something that you can do that can have a local impact. Now you cannot be involved at all in politics in America do impact India, right? So they do impact. that.
Ramaswamy,
All right, hang on. I don't want to get into politics. So my question is this, okay? You have two t-shirt shops. One of them is very ethical. They pay their employees well. They don't employ children. The other one is extremely unethical. They don't pay their employees shit. They make them work in dangerous conditions for 18 hours a day. Do you really believe that you and all your vegan friends buying from the ethical place is going to hurt?
Okay, we're just
situation?
going back to something we spent like at least 30 minutes
Yeah. Let's stick to the meta ethics.
Well, so the ultimate question I was going to ask is like, would you eat meat if it was cheaper than being vegan?
No.
Would I eat meat? If it was the case that veganism cost $1 million and meat costs like $0, I probably would. But if you meant like a couple of dollars more, then no, of course I'd still go vegan.
I have a more pointed question, Alex. This is for any of the opponents here. If you're in the woods and you are starving and it's looking like you're going to need something like a porcupine or something, even though if you don't want it, to survive, to live, would you kill the animal for you to live?
So if we're talking about a herbivorous animal, no. If we're talking about a carnivorous animal, sure. So if I could find like a coyote or a wolf or, I don't know, some insects or bear, if I had like a bow and arrow or a gun, yeah. So I would do that. But if it's a herbivorous animal, no.
What about Sinthe? Hold on. Let me run my line of question. Hold on a second.
I'm just
Synth. What about you or Kornith in that situation?
I would definitely shoot for a preference towards killing the carnivorous animal. I think it depends on the scenario. If I think that I'm going to get back to like human civilization or something in like a month, then yeah, I'd probably kill the animal to live because I think it can do more good elsewhere. Okay. But I'm a consequentialist and vegan gains the threshold deontologist.
Hold on, Synth, hold on. What if you don't know the consequence? It's in the moment. You don't know for sure what's going to happen. You're hoping for the best. I would use
my expected value.
Okay, so whether it was carnivorous animal or an herbivore, a cute little rabbit or whatever, you would in fact take another animal's life for your life to flourish, right? All of you?
Not for my life to flourish, but so that I can do more good, right? So to maximize utility.
That requires your life. Hold on. That requires your.
It does, and some it doesn't.
Does it?
It's not part of the definition of that.
It's just impossible to get you to answer.
I need to go to the.
Because you don't understand, Jimbob. You try not to understand.
Let me ask. No.
Trying to understand.
You're just so squirrely. It's disgusting.
You want to hide ambiguity. I make sure to clarify everything. You don't like that.
Can you give me my line of questions so I can have a conversation with a normal person, please?
Okay. So it has nothing to do with our own lives flourishing. It's the ability to enact instrumental value on expected utility.
Wait a second. Do you have to be alive for that value to?
You don't have to flourish though.
Okay, so forget survive. Let's say survive. I misspoke.
It means
survive
to get to instrumental value.
So survive. Let's just cut all the long form descriptions. Sure. Would you say survive is an adequate term?
As a means for enacting instrumental value, yeah.
Okay, so all three of you would do what it takes to survive, given that you might have a chance to implement some other higher value in the future, but you're not sure you can, but at least in the moment.
This is why we clarified this for you over and over again.
I'm talking to Kornith. Am I talking to you or Kornith?
Yes, you just said all three of us, dummy. You said all three of us, dummy. All three of you. All three of you. That means all three of us. Is Kornith three people or one person?
So the answer is yes, that's all it takes.
Can you count? Can you count, Jimbob?
So would you kill an animal to survive? Yes or no?
If I can reasonably expect to return to like normal civilization, be able to enact that utility in like a reasonable time frame, yes. If I don't expect that, or I have no reason to believe that, probably not.
Okay, so why in that moment is the animal's life more valuable? What is it about you guys, from your view?
Like an act in the moment.
Hold on. What is it about being a human that makes your life more important than the animal you're about to kill for some potential future value?
Being a human.
It's not about being a human. It's being able to enact instrumental value at a future point if we can reasonably expect
Is it required to be a human to even have the concept of value of the future? No. Okay, let's go into that. Okay,
if I was a mutant and I had different DNA and I was technically a different species, yes,
that's not reality.
That's
begging the question.
It's not reality that I'm not a human. That's called hypotheticals, dummy.
Yes, it is question begging.
You don't know what a question begging is. You don't know what question begging is.
No, question begging is when you make an argument.
So what's
in
question
is
hold on. What's in question is can other animals, any other animal you can think of, establish value claims, value judgments about reality and about the future.
Yes.
So,
of course.
Certain animals will starve to death to protect their children.
How do you know that's not a reaction? I asked for a value judgment about what's happening, not a reaction.
Okay, well, there's no way to necessarily know exactly what an animal's thinking, but we can assume or like make judgments based on their actions. It seems like they're making some kind of value judgment that their children are more important than them.
Okay.
So when a wallaby throws its cub, I think it is a cub in English, to the dingo dog, do you go to the wallaby and say, "You bastard, you complete and utter bastard," and then jail it?
What the fuck is the connection there? It's like a logical leap.
The assumption.
If you say those who will protect their young, wallabies famously throw their young to the predator.
Okay.
So is it making a value judgment, and should we judge it?
It might be making a value judgment that it can
protect
culpable? More of its children or protect itself and have more children later.
And it has that thought in the future?
Well, yeah, likely. I mean, it might be making a judgment there where we could either both die or I could sacrifice one and have more children later. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just instinct. But anyway, since Posh is back, I just want clarification on the trait. You said Homo sapiens sapien. Does that mean a wise human, like specifically, or?
Well, technically, sapiens in Latin means the thinking one, right? The one who practices thinking, knowledge. But so, no, I'm not trying to break it down to its etymology. But no, I'm saying the species that we are is what I would value most. And the trait that we have is the ability to have these debates. Because I guarantee you will not come across a collection of wallabies discussing what is it proper to throw your young to the dingo dog.
Just to qualify, it's not necessarily being of the genus Homo. If we were to, like, I don't know, encounter Star Trek aliens like Vulcans, you would be in favor of, say, giving them the same rights as human beings.
I would start by preferring human beings for the sake of precaution. Victory loves prudence and all that.
Well, let's say the alien species was totally friendly, they integrated perfectly with our society, same exact values, like you would give them the same rights, right?
Yes, why not?
Okay, so this is more to do with the actual sapience part of the equation rather than like the genus Homo.
I'm saying that because in reality that we are grounded in, the only species I know is humans. If you want to bring in hypotheticals, and that expands my definition, I would be willing to consider that, yes.
Okay, well, what that sounds like to me is you're concerned with things like intelligence, sentience, ability to think and reason. If that were the case, if you're willing to take away rights from animals for that reason, wouldn't that also logically lead to you taking rights away from mentally disabled people?
We do take rights away from them.
Well,
yes, we do. But
we don't technically.
On consequentialist grounds, actually.
Yeah, we restrict certain things from those people for their own good.
Well, they're treated.
But not
like,
the things we do for animals.
They're treated more like children, but it's in their own interest. Like if we let somebody severely mentally disabled just let loose to their own devices, they could like kill themselves. So it's protecting a greater number of rights, sort of like if you let your kid drive a car, you know.
Well, we value them as us. We value them as us in our category, so that's why, and that's the same for you. I mean, until some threshold happens where you value cows over a human being. So I don't think cornering anybody and saying, "Oh, would you take away the rights for someone to own a gun?" Right? If they were completely whacked out of their mind and demonstrated some sort of behavior that we wouldn't want happening, right? That would be a lawful thing to do, but. I don't see how the questioning itself doesn't get to the core, which Posh is posing, is that we're talking about a category of beings, and inside the category of beings, our capabilities of accessing metaphysics, for instance, or making value judgments, both past, present, and future, argumentation, moral reasoning, prayer, pondering philosophy and whether God exists.
Are you able to eat mentally disabled people, though?
No, because they're in our category.
What matters again is back to the category, and we pivoted back.
Well,
yeah, because it's not a trait.
Let me to continue the line.
Are based on traits. You can't have a category unless you have a definition for that category.
Particulars are underneath something universal.
Those are traits.
Would you treat a human being who acted like a dog, like, but transpose it, like going around licking people's faces, right, humping people's legs, just killing all sorts of small critters for
we
fun.
Talking about somebody who's acting like a dog or actually is like a dog in their brain?
Well,
a dog brain in a human body, Posh?
What would be the difference? Well, a dog brain in a human body.
Because the way you behave is different than the way you're internally. I could pretend to be a dog. That would make me think like a dog.
No.
You could pretend to be other things too.
If a human being, let's say human brain, emulates a dog, like all the behaviors of a dog, common behaviors that we are, well, I'm not accustomed to because I didn't see the point of having one. But let's say You know, a human being starts humping someone's leg or licks someone's face. Just comes up and
answer the
licks
question,
someone's
Posh.
face.
Answer the question that you were asked. Is it a human brain? Is it a dog brain in a human body? Is it a human acting like a dog?
No. I said a human brain emulating a dog.
Acting like a dog? It's just acting. It doesn't have some like mental condition that gives it the same mental capacity as a dog.
No, just emulating the behavioral patterns of a dog.
Okay.
How would you treat that person?
Like
would that person be a
crazy?
sexual predator? If they, you know,
Well, I
just
think they're
harassment, let's
crazy.
say.
I would
Why?
treat them like a crazy person because that's not how a human acts.
What's the trait? What's the trait that makes
Well,
the difference?
if they're merely acting like a dog, then presumably they're intentionally doing this, and I would just think they're either seeking attention for like I don't know, humor, or they're like crazy or something.
So what is it about a human that you would come to the conclusion that they're
but
trying?
what's condemnable about that?
Okay, it's not the fact that they're human, it's that they have the capability to do otherwise. But if they were a mentally challenged human who doesn't have the capability to not, we would say that we would not hold them as a
So
sexual predator.
I'll address this question.
It's not about the trait of the category, it's about the individual's ability. And we're grading the individual there.
Addressing this directly to Kornith because he needs to speak more. How do you know that a dog does not have the capacity to act as a human? They just don't.
We don't know. That's going to go on to like epistemology. I'm going to take Noah's like reasonable assumption, though. We have no evidence to assume the otherwise.
So if a person decides that the moral prerogative is best followed by emulating dogs, because there is no shortage of people who keep telling me, we don't deserve dogs. They're like angels without wings. Some have fur and all that gay nonsense.
Hang on, gentlemen. I'm sorry. I have to interrupt briefly. Do not spam my fucking chat. You'll get banned instantly. You stupid vegan fucks. Do not spam my fucking chat ever. Never do it. You're just going to get banned. And then I'll ban everybody who's your friend too. Get the fuck out of my chat. Don't spam it. Back to the debate. Go ahead,
Also,
gentlemen.
Spam is
Posh, after you're done, can I get 2 questions in? Just whenever you finish.
Yes, I just want to say spam is a meat product. So you spamming the chat as vegans, you're all hypocrites, and you're acting like dogs.
Good one.
Okay. Anyway, I was gonna change gears a little bit. I have literally 2 questions, one for vegan gains and one for everyone on the vegan side. Vegan, you said you wouldn't kill an omnivorous animal if you were starving. What if your child was going to starve? Would you then kill that animal?
No.
You would let your son.
I don't see a way of justifying killing another being just so someone else can live. Assuming it's herbivorous.
Would you condemn a person for doing
You would
that?
literally let your kid die. You would literally avoid killing an omnivorous animal, let your kid die.
Let me ask you this: like, would you kill another child to save your child?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Well, I don't see that as moral. You might have more of an interest personally in having your own child living, but I just don't personally see that as moral.
Okay. I mean, I think
can sympathize, but I don't personally see it as moral.
So you're like, your little kid is like, you guys are trapped in the forest. Your little kid is looking at you like, Daddy, we're gonna die. I'm starving. You're like, yeah,
that birdie has a life to live.
Well, I mean you would presumably kill another human being in that situation to save your kids. So,
well, the difference is killing another human being. You'll go to jail for a very long time.
Well, let's assume that wasn't a circumstance.
Yeah, if my choice was my kid versus a random other kid, and I wouldn't go to jail, I would 100% save my kid's life.
What if it was 10 other kids?
If it was 10 other kids, yeah, I think I probably would. I think any father would.
Yeah, like again, I could maybe sympathize, and maybe if I had children, I would do it if I love my child enough, but I still wouldn't consider that moral.
I mean, hey, if you want to laugh, why don't we ask the other people? Would you kill someone else's kid to save your kid?
I think this question. Yeah, I think.
So
to be fair,
think the problem,
since you don't have a kid, it's not really a question.
Well, no, I think the problem here. I think the problem here is you're mixing up like what you would personally do with what is and isn't moral. I'm thinking of what is and isn't moral, not what I'd.
I'm just talking about what would you do?
Yeah, what would I do? Again, I've never had a child. I guess like my cat. Would I kill another animal to save my cat? Maybe. Like, I guess. Possibly. Yeah, like, so I don't know. I've never been in an adverse situation like that. But maybe, I would say.
Would you call it immoral for someone to do that?
I'll just move on to the next question. This is to everyone on the vegan side. How many animals do you own that you rescued from a shelter or any type of other place?
Well, it would be like all of them technically. So some of them weren't from shelters. Some of them were from people who are just getting rid of their pets because they couldn't take care of them anymore. But yeah, all of them, like none of them were bought from breeders.
Okay, you have quite a few. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
What about Sinthe and Kornith? How many animals?
I wouldn't want to spend my money on that. I think there's better things to spend my money on. But if somebody else wanted to like own a pet or something, I think they should take it to shelter.
When you say
I have to say based Sinthe, no pets.
When you say save money, you're talking about the up tier. You're not talking about actually getting the animal, because if you get it from a shelter, it's like
the up tier is expensive. Yeah, I don't want to pay for dog food. I don't want to pay for other things.
Kornith, how many animals do you own that you rescued?
Currently none.
Okay. But you do realize that those animals, if no one rescues them, are going to die.
Yeah, and that money that I could be spending on an animal, instead of doing that, I can take that money, I could spend it through GiveWell to give vitamin A supplements to somebody who's dying in the third world. And I think it's more effective. It's like
a human
50 cents for vitamin A supplement.
A human?
Yeah, sure, a human.
What's it about the human that's more valuable than the dog?
Because it's cheaper to give them a lot of utility than it is to give a dog a lot of utility.
I don't know why you're asking. We've already...
Because you guys have different answers, that's why.
Okay, well, he's already...
No, I think me and Vegan Gains actually do have the same answer, which is just that we care more about the impact that we can have on a human being than the impact we can have on a small animal, because obviously it's not going to have as much of an impact.
To a human charity like that, because I would assume those people aren't vegan, but... Anyway,
Sinthe, what's the difference between you going out like for your birthday and having one steak and you rescuing the one animal?
You going out
from in terms of a moral.
There's a lot of differences. One is that the steak causes the steak is a net negative, and then in the case of saving an animal, it's a net positive.
Right, okay. Between you not doing that, you not rescuing an animal.
Oh, you meant not rescue? Okay, I guess the difference between I have no idea. The empirics are probably going to bear out that the steak's probably worse on utility.
You're violating the rights of the one animal, whereas you're not saving another animal.
Wait, if you're vegan, if your dog runs away, isn't it violation to retrieve him and keep him in your apartment?
No.
In the same way, it wouldn't be.
How is that not a violation? No, how is that not a violation?
For a child.
I'm talking to Vegan Gains, dude. Why is that not a violation?
Yeah, because I'm doing it in the dog's interest, sort of like if a child ran away and like got lost.
So suspended rights.
Well, yeah, it's basically like a child, but I think I'm protecting a greater amount of rights by bringing the dog back into the apartment versus letting it roam free and get killed and eaten by a coyote.
No, what if it's destined to kill more carnivorous animals that are smaller than it?
If it were destined to, just like only kill
if you
coyotes?
Yeah, would you just not retrieve it?
Well, maybe, but it probably would kill herbivorous animals if it could survive on its own and maybe like get integrated into a coyote or wolf pack.
Wait a second, Vegan Gains. What if your dog was destined to kill Hitler? Would you actually retrieve the dog?
No, I wouldn't, for sure. I'd let it kill Hitler, but like again, I think we got sidetracked.
But then Hitler couldn't kill Hitler, and that would make Hitler horrible.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry. There is no... Oh, dude. There is no great time to wind the debate down, but we do have callers stacking up, and we have a ton of super chats that we need to get to. However, it was requested by a large Crucible donor that I allow and we're at the 1 hour, 50 minute mark. a cage match specifically, and I'm going to allow this for 5 minutes between Sinthe and Made by Jimbob.
Let's go.
Gentlemen, the floor is open. Just you two.
Sinthe,
Go ahead.
I want to go back. I'm going to try to be calm, okay? I got worked up. I apologize.
It's all good.
You said goals are not arbitrary, and I said, how could that be the case? And correct me if I'm wrong. You said because a goal needs to be coherent, to which I responded that can I have a goal to be incoherent? And then you went into some different philosophical categories, correct?
Yeah, so to say that you have a goal to be incoherent is issues in the same way that you could say, I have a goal to have no goal. But it's a contradiction internally. So I need like both a conception of what a goal is to make that the terms you're using coherent. And then on top of that, and both from an account of a goal, I then also need an account of personal identity. Otherwise, everything that you said is incoherent. On my view, it's very easy to make coherent what it is to say something like there's an obligation to do X, and that's just to maximize utility to do X. I don't need personal identity. I don't need the goal talk. All of these like ambiguous terminology.
So if I start with an if I want to do X, therefore these are the actions toward X, and the goal to do X is arbitrary and it's totally coherent. Right?
No, that wasn't a proper English answer, so I'm not sure exactly what you meant.
So if I want to eat a steak,
what do you mean by? But I need clarity on what you mean. What is your account of personal identity in the if you're using that?
I want to eat steak,
that doesn't answer my question.
I'm posing a hypothetical that's actually
but I need
reality.
Clarity on my question. Otherwise, I'm not.
What's your question?
I need your account of personal identity. Otherwise, I'm not going to understand your goal talk.
Can you rephrase that question? What you mean by that? Your account of personal identity.
Yeah, do you know what personal identity is? Like in philosophy, you know the theories around it.
No, I don't know the theories of the identity.
If I asked you, what is it that makes you you? If I asked it, what is it that makes you you? Is there a way you can give me an account of what makes you you that'll be coherent with the goal talk you're using?
Let's just say I reduce myself to a machine that prefers things.
A machine that prefers things?
Yeah.
What makes that machine the same machine? You've just kicked the can down the road.
No, I'm arguing from a totally mechanistic view right now.
Yeah, what is it that makes that machine, that mechanism, the same mechanism?
Just law.
Law?
Yeah, the law of
what is
physics. Laws of physics and inputs, and then the reactivity to those inputs.
So I have reactivity into inputs, and I also have inputs and outputs, and I also am bound by the laws of physics. Why am I not you? What's the difference between me and you?
Well, if all things are mechanically determined, you couldn't actually come to the conclusion on the difference.
So then, yeah, just that you can't give me an answer, right? So if all you're saying is mechanistic,
no.
From my
view, is I'm a creation of God.
So what's the evidence? What's the evidence that you're a creation of God?
It's not evidence based. Not all truth claims are evidence based.
So that means that you don't have justification for it. Not all evidence is a justification for true belief.
Do you have any evidence that truth exists?
Yes.
Where?
Yeah, the evidence that truth exists.
Yeah.
So all I take evidence to mean is I just take a Bayesian account of evidence. So something that makes something more likely to be.
Where do you wait? Hold on.
The evidence that truth is the evidence that truth exists are our intuitions, right? Our intuitions are more likely to be true.
Where's the evidence of your intuition? Where's your evidence of intuition?
Do you have a direct first-hand account of our intuition?
No, that's begging the question. That assumes that you have access to evidence. Yes, it does.
No.
It assumes that
the conclusion was not I have access to evidence. That's not begging the question.
No, the thing in question is basically saying, how do you know truth exists? You have to start that there's something true to pursue descriptive claims about the external world.
What is your theory of truth is what?
Coherency and correspondence is a combination.
It's a combination of both. So in being internally coherent and corresponding with something else. Is it reality? Is that it?
I'm saying you can't have correspondence without coherency, and coherency starts with an assumption that there is this metaphysical category called truth, but it's not evidence-based. You can't
then you're begging the question.
You can't. No, it's faith-based, so it's not evidence. It's not
your
like
account of truth begs the question.
It's a presupposition. You have to start with it.
That means it begs the question. Your presupposition is your conclusion.
Nobody escapes faith in the concept of truth.
So I'm not begging the question, but you are. Now you're just saying everyone begs the question.
Do you assume
everyone
truth
begs the question?
Since
I think I'm a deflationist on truth. I don't have to assume.
Can I ask you a question, though? Do you assume truth before any methodology is deployed?
I just answered your question. I don't assume truth. I'm a deflationist. I think that all it means to say X is true is to say X, is to affirm X. So X is true if and only if X.
So can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, snow is white is true if and only if snow is white.
Hold on. Does there need to be snow external of you and independent of you? You're not snow, right?
You can have analytic truth and you can have synthetic truth. Synthetic truths require ontological commitments, but analytic ones don't.
Are you snow?
Under my view.
Are you
I'm
Snow?
not Snow.
So
No.
how do you know that?
So just because I'm not Snow doesn't
How do you
mean that there
know
needs to-
you're not?
Listen,
No.
I'm answering your
I
question.
didn't
Listen,
ask that you were. I asked how do you know?
Listen. Just because, so the reason I know that is just because I'm not Snow doesn't mean that Snow has to exist externally for there to be truth statements about Snow.
Okay,
Just
all right,
it's
guys,
the same reason that,
I'm sorry to cut you off, Synth. It just happened to be on your play, right?
okay.
But the thing is we do have to be fair to all the other panelists. And I did have a major donor who did want to see that cage match. And I'm sure that they want to see future cage matches with the two of you, which would be a lot of fun. But we do have to get into the super chat call-in section. Now, we do things a little bit differently on the crew.
Wait, Andrew, real quick.
Yeah.
You did say I was going to get a chance to do some health-related stuff.
Yeah, and you're going to. Okay,
Okay.
Listen closely. We do things differently on the Crucible. When the closing statements are done, and I'm going to give everybody a very quick closing statement on this, we're going to move directly over to the super chats first, then the callers. Okay, I understand this is going to be a little bit longer, but there are tons of super chats that regard the health of this. There's still going to be more debate as we go through these super chats. I promise you, Alex, you'll get plenty of chance to engage on these. So first and foremost, as we're moving through this, I want to get through all the closing statements. I'm going to only give you guys a very short amount of time, 2 minutes each. Please make it very brief for the purposes of time constraints so we can move through the super chats and continue the debate. Kornith, since you were the loudest this entire debate and you never shut the fuck up, we're going to start with you. 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
It was already going to be a Spurg fest. I didn't feel like adding another one of us just screaming at each other was going to make this a more productive conversation. So I was just letting them take the front wheels for this. I feel like that the non-vegan side failed to provide the trait, or what is the morally relevant distinction between humans and animals. They went down a category. And then when we found out what's that category, members of this category aren't going to actually be defined as members of this category by their own definition of that category. They didn't really have an answer to that, and they still valued those members of the category that weren't falling under their definition of the category. And that feels like it's just a really weird line where they didn't have an actual answer to this, but they're just trying to intuition pump it and fail to do so. And that's the nature of trying to do the internal critique, where you can't really do an internal critique of this position. You need to do a truth value claim of your own side and posit your own counterposition for that. But since they chose to go for the internal critique and they failed to, it just felt like it failed to live up to it. And we never really got to the health point, which is what I was a lot more wanting to get down. So I hope we get to do that later.
Yeah, we'll be able to. Jimbob, I'm going to allow you your 2 minutes for a closing statement. Go ahead when you're ready.
Sure. This was supposed to be a debate about ethics of veganism. We got into some superficial logistics about things, assuming that there was a right and wrong answer as far as good or immoral. We didn't get to that. The vegan doesn't have a position. They can't actually tell me why anything is right or wrong, even if it wasn't veganism. They couldn't tell me why killing another person is immoral or unethical. They could only tell me that they generally don't prefer it because there might be some preferable outcomes in the future if you don't do that. And that seems to be the case. So I'm going to run with that. We're looking for something bigger than that. The irony of the name the trait problem, like even if you drew us through that very monotonous, nonsensical hypothetical, let's say we ended with where you wanted us to end down that dialogue tree, and you said, well, that's absurd. Well, the irony is that the vegan can't tell you the difference between a human and a being such that we value human beings over animals, which would be assumed in the name the trait argument. So you have to assume there's a distinction that's valuable, then you have to reject the distinction and then make a value judgment about the conclusion. It's a complete it's a law of identity issue. And that's why you can't actually take a Christian down this road, because you guys can't deal with categories. You need to deal with particular traits, properties of nature. We refuse properties of nature. We go to metaphysical categories called human beings, and we value them all the same, even in the midst of someone who's disabled and can't do things. That's still in the category. So I don't think the vegans have any ethical or moral arguments to bring. And if they did bring them, we would have axed them immediately.
Yeah, so the dad jokes are flowing in chat, unfortunately, right? But they're gonna fuck with me. What can I say? Vegan gains, 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning of the debate, there's no way to justify meat eating without taking away human rights. They named the trait as being Homo sapien, but when I asked the hypothetical of an intelligent alien species, they said they would grant rights to that intelligent alien species. That's clearly a contradiction to me, and I don't think we had enough of an opportunity to really discuss this, but it sounded like they wouldn't be willing to take away the rights of severely mentally disabled people, which again seems like a contradiction given the category and traits they named.
Hey, appreciate that closing statement. We're going to move over to Posh Redneck. Go ahead when you're ready.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Sorry, I'm a bit on edge. It's very late here. But I believe that we didn't get really into the ethics of things. And we didn't really explore the problems of universal mechanistic materialism, as we would have the problem of having everything literally being an output of a portion of a mechanism, this giant mechanism that is reality itself, that is governed by laws, because no output would ever be any better or worse than any other output, as much as any other mechanism producing any other output would be better or worse, independent of a metaphysically different entity, such as consciousness being able to deem things better or worse. Otherwise, we're only going to have algorithmic differences, and how they play out, by the way, all would be calculable, at least in theory, not in practice, because it would require knowing all the laws of nature. But at the same time, I don't see how, even though we're not all aligned completely, neither us on the carnivorous side nor those on the vegan side, as to all of the things. So there are people who would be much more closer to consequentialism on the vegan side, and then others who would not be. But again, I believe that if we're going to have moral categories such as you're not allowed to kill animals for the sake of pleasure, you're not allowed to kill them directly, but you're allowed to kill them indirectly, I believe we are no longer in the realm of ethics. We're in the realm of specific preferences. And when we're in the realm of preferences, ethics are just as good as aesthetics. No one here can convince me that the color red is better than the color blue.
You're out of time, Posh. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. I've said all that.
I do appreciate that very much. Sinthe, I'm going to move over to you for your closing. Go ahead when you're ready. You have 2 minutes on the clock.
Sure. The argument given by the other side was basically just, unfortunately, whataboutisms, where they try to identify moral things they believe vegans and them both do. And I'll give the exception to Alex, who I think made positive arguments in good faith with the goal of a real dialogue, even if they didn't move my view personally. Alex's line for what makes humans valuable was our higher level of sentience. And it's true that we don't have that on average, but some humans have much lower levels of sentience, but we wouldn't say that these humans are ones who it's okay to kill and eat, even if it was convenient for health grounds, which unfortunately we never got a chance to get into. Some of them, like newborns, are even dumber than dogs, pigs, and cows. Dogs, pigs, and cows, for example, can get their own food and make some basic attempts at communicating, even if they're not very complicated. Even if the newborn had stunted growth and it would never develop into a full human being, it would still be wrong to eat that newborn or to torture it or to beat it to death with a shovel. And the other side claimed that what made humans valuable, the other two members of the side claimed that what made humans valuable was their species, in the case of Jimbob, and their subspecies in the case of Posh. It wasn't clear that they even had a notion of what a subspecies was, or what it meant to be Homo sapiens. And if all you can say is, well, it's the species, well, the scientific understanding of what it is to be a species for sexually reproducing species would be Ernst Marr's species concept, which is that ability to reproduce and consistently produce fertile offspring. Clearly, that's not going to be more morally valuable. If two individuals were able to reproduce with each other, but nobody else in the human population, even if it was the case both of those people were severely retarded, it wouldn't mean that those people are not worth the moral value or that you can kill and eat them. So let's imagine someone is the same in all respects as a disabled person, but they're technically a different species. Is it okay to beat them to death with a shovel? Clearly not. Some final statements. The thing that
20
makes it wrong
seconds,
to torture,
20 seconds.
Yeah, I got you. The things that makes it wrong to torture dogs is that it causes them suffering, and suffering is by definition a bad experience. I don't know why the other side thinks we're committed to materialism. I don't think we have to be, because I think ontology is usually just a semantic dispute. And if you disagree with neutral monism, then you're just wrong, or you're just not disagreeing. That's it.
Thank you so much for that closing statement, Alex. Because I started with you last, right? Last but not least, last time. I'm also going to give you the last word for your close. You have 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
Yeah, primarily, I really want to get into the health detriments of veganism, and unfortunately, we didn't get to go into it. But it seems there's multiple contradictions that we saw on the vegan side. To give Vegan Gains credit, he's at least somewhat consistent when it comes to his personal actions versus his beliefs. Versus, no offense, but Kornith and Sinthe have not rescued an animal because it's expensive. Then, by that logic, they should also eat meat if it was cheaper, right? So it just kind of seems like saving money is the main motivator when it comes to certain things like sweatshops, but then when it comes to other things like saving animals, this doesn't play a role. I don't know. I think there was also some crazy things that were said, like Vegan Gains saying he would let his kid die instead of killing an omnivorous animal, which I don't believe for a second. But also it seems like according to their worldview, indirect animal deaths are okay. The issue is direct ones, which I think from an animal's perspective is completely irrelevant. Like, why would an animal care if you die directly or indirectly? But I do appreciate my debate counterparts. It was my first ever vegan debate, and I enjoyed it. So thank you, guys.
Appreciate that very much, Alex. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a couple of super chats, move to a caller, couple super chats, move to a caller. So hopefully we can get through everything. I also understand for the purpose of time constraints, Posh Redneck, you may have to bow out. He did tell me that earlier. It's very, very late for him. But we are going to start moving into this. I only had one question for the purposes of time. It's just something I genuinely am curious about for Vegan Gains. And even Sinthe and Kornith, you can answer this. I have a problem with mice in my house because I live in the middle of the countryside, right? Like my docks is out there. There's nothing I can do about that. You guys can see for yourself. It's literally smack dab between a bunch of cornfields. There's field mice everywhere. I recently adopted 2 kittens. They weren't rescue kittens. They were just like barn cats. But I brought them inside and domesticated them inside. And they're still kittens. And one of them like crawls up on my back and does the whole cat thing. You know what I mean? You know how little bastards do that shit. They do the cat thing and he makes a little bed on my back, right? Little prick. But he seems to be immediately an efficient mice killing machine. I mean, he is super effective at it. Now, they're not very good for rats. That's what the 22 is for. But they're very efficient at killing the mice. Am I doing anything wrong from your guys' perspective? Am I doing something that's immoral?
Yeah, so if you have a mouse infestation that you can't deal with by other means, then I wouldn't say that's violating the mouse's rights. You're just protecting your own property and well-being.
Okay. And then Sinthe and Kornith, I was just kind of wondering about that. By the way, treat the cats great. They're workhorses, man. Yeah, especially the one kitten seems to really just be a killing machine. Do you guys think I'm doing something immoral?
You actually don't have any other option for which you can. Yeah, I wouldn't care that much.
Well, I have used
option, then...
Well, I have used poison, but I've also seen these mice die via the poison that they ingest, and it literally dries them out from the inside out, and it's horrible. Like you touch the mouse and it cracks into pieces. I'm not kidding. You know what I mean? I feel like the cat taking out the mouse is actually more merciful. Not kidding. I really am not.
I could believe.
Do you guys think I'm? Yeah, go ahead.
It sounds like out of those 2 options, I would think the cat's better. But I've seen like the vegan mouse traps. I'm not sure if they work or not. Do those things like they actually get the mice and the rats?
I have done live traps. They're not very effective. The problem is they breed like fucking mice, right? Yeah, okay. They just breed like mice. So you can't even catch and release. They just come right back into the house. You know what I mean? So I feel like the cat has a ball. It seems to have more fun than a cat should be allowed to have. And my mouse problem gets solved. Does that seem fair?
Well, I don't have an issue with it. If there's no other option, like why would there be an issue?
Kornith?
It also might generally increase utility because when you have cats, mice generally tend to avoid where cats are for that reason. These mice are going to avoid predators, so you're going to have less that are going to end up dying to
Unless
that
it's
poison as
wintertime
well.
in Michigan, Kornith, because if it's wintertime in Michigan, they'll risk it for the food. But that's when that son of a bitch, that vicious, all claws and mouth, just comes down and mercilessly assassinates these things. I'm just saying. And they are merciless. They toy with it. And I don't stop that.
My cat
don't.
kills flies.
Mine does too, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Anyway, okay, so I got to get over to this other stuff here, guys. Thank you so much for all of the participation. Starting with Godzilla37, who sends in $5 Canadian. He says, let me pull this up. My brief time on Earth, I found this one little fact so confusing. Perhaps you can shed light on it. Why are vegans always meatheads? I don't. This is rhetorical, okay? It's obviously not designed to be a serious question. Godzilla, though, has been a longtime Crucible member, and we thank him very much.
I think it's
Can I grant copyright rights to everyone who wants to use my term beatheads?
Oh, geez. That was the worst dad joke than this one. I got jokes.
Not even a dad yet.
Yeah, I got jokes. Who's ready for some prime ribs? Terrible, Wicked Wally. Terrible. Santeria for $10 says, for the meat eaters, if artificial meat was made to be identical in taste and nutrients, all else equal, would you still kill animals for food? This is a great question, by the way.
If it was if it was studied and it was exactly the same in terms of health, like there's no health downsides and the taste was the same, then no, I would probably, and if the price was the same, which assuming everything is the same, then no, I'll probably get the artificial meat, but I doubt they could make it have the same health benefits as regular food. But if they could, yeah, I probably would go with the artificial.
The lab-grown meat seems to be able to price match, as well as, and somebody can correct me if wrong, but it seems to be price matching now, and it also seems to be the case that it's identical in terms of macro and micro content. So that
I would just want that to be studied more, because like I don't like taking things that are like too new, you know. But yeah, if it was studied like extensively and it was found like, hey, people eat this for 10 years, they're perfectly healthy, and they did some double-blind placebo study, yeah, for sure.
Well, there's no need to have that sort of rigorous experimentation. You would assume, since it is literally the same thing, it would have the same effect on your body.
No, I think how something is created makes a difference, whether it's grown in a lab or it's grown.
No,
That's why
if it's the same thing, I don't know why it would make it different.
Well, I mean, I don't have a.
It was proven to be the same thing.
I don't have like I don't have like a device that can tell me it's the same thing. But there's a big difference.
Literally the same thing. You're just duplicating animals.
Well, there's a big difference between farm raised and like wild animals in terms of how they taste and in terms of the nutrients. So I would assume it would probably be something like that. But if it's actually the same thing, and I know that for a fact, then yeah.
Well, you're just duplicating animal cells. It literally is the same thing.
You don't want to eat all animal cells.
It's skeletal muscle tissue.
Growths. But again, let's deal with it as a hypothetical, not as in relation to what we have.
Let's move through quick.
Yes, okay. If that could be shown, also another thing to consider would be all the other things we get from animals, such as meat, such as milk, etc. That would be another point of consideration. But if we could, again, in line with the question, duplicate all of these things artificially, absolutely, and I would want all farm animals eliminated then, because they would be completely useless and would just be a waste of space and everything.
My answer is short. I think I wouldn't do that. I would want to maintain the tradition of hunting for people, for animals, but for people, and that the part of doing work and the sacrifice of an animal dying, I think, would be an important aspect of valuing the food that you get, as opposed to Walmarting it. Even if it tastes the same and you couldn't tell the difference, there's another aspect of life that's missing there.
Can we get people on the vegan side to also answer this question?
Yeah, well, that's where we're moving. Kornith, did you have something you wanted to say on this?
No, not particularly. That's like an obvious yeah, right?
It feels like it is kind of an obvious yeah for the vegan side anyway. Let me move on to the next super chat, guys. The Unconventional Man for $5 says, when was the last time or when was the last thing any of these fools debated an animal on morals or any other topic for that matter? LOL.
I debate my dog every day.
I yell at my cats all the time. They're retarded.
I feel like mine's kind of smart, you know what I mean? But what he's asking to the vegan side is like, you can't debate with animals. So it really just comes down to you and whatever your preferences are, doesn't it?
I'm glad we have a translator for this guy's like incredibly broken English. But yeah, no, I think that he's asking, what is the last time any of these... No, no, don't do that to Andrew. Look, what was the last time any of these fools debated an animal on morals or any other topic for that matter? I don't think that you have to debate. I haven't debated like a really stupid person, and I mean, I guess I have debated stupid people all the time, but you haven't debated a person who's really stupid and them done very well ever, right? And the same is true for animals. If you argue with an animal, they're not going to do very well.
They won't argue at all.
You have to debate. Some animals will bark back at you. So
that's not an argument.
The idea, yeah, neither are much of the things that you said in this debate, but that's fine, right? Like you can still have an argument even if you're not making good ones.
You're retarded.
So you're so mad. So the point being, just because somebody can't make a good argument doesn't mean that they don't have moral value. I think that Jimbob, despite the fact that he's made no good arguments in his entire life, still has moral value. If you're wrong to torture Jimbob.
Because I'm a part of a category that can make arguments, unlike a dog.
I don't think you're part of that category. I'm sorry, Jimbob. You're not part of the good arguer category. I love you.
All right. I'm gonna move on. I'm going to move over to a caller. Like I said, I'm going to take a few of these super chats at a time, move on to a caller. Peacecraft, you've been waiting very patiently in the background. Now listen, nobody violate the TOS on this. I would love to keep this VOD up for everybody to see, including you, caller. Peacecraft, go ahead, be very brief and get through it very quickly. Go ahead.
So vegan gains, I have 2 questions. And because Andrew doesn't let me ask more than 2 questions. You stated that your moral philosophy was deontological and that you were concerned about rights violations. While the debate was going on and I tried to Google a list of animal rights, when you were referring to animals having rights, were you just stating that they have all the rights inherent to human beings?
Well, I come from the position that animals should have the same rights as human beings, so that's what I meant. It's not that they currently have those rights.
Perfect. That's fine. I was trying to find the list that you were pulling from or what you meant by that term. That doesn't count as a question. I just wanted to clarify before my first actual question. Okay. You stated that your moral philosophy was deontological and that you were concerned about rights violations. Would purchasing stolen goods from a third party then make you a party to rights violations? How do you delineate the death of insects or stealing the foodstuffs of animals, which you claim have equivalent human rights, only to then turn around and absolve yourself of all moral consideration just because you're a third party? How do you delineate between, say, the immoral application of chemical warfare on human beings and chemical warfare to include neurotoxins against other living organisms in the case of pesticides? If you hold that animals have equivalent human rights or should have them, how did these farms lay claim to their habitat? How did these farms lay claim to their habitat only to then poison or negligently kill them through sugar processing for you then to wash your hands of moral culpability? Functionally, you're taking poisoned fruit from a poisoned tree.
Yeah, so chemical weapons actually aren't banned for use against people. It's only the Geneva Convention that bans it in warfare. The police actually deploy chemical weapons all the time. For self-defense, you're able to use chemical weapons. So pepper spray is an example. What is it? The gas that they use makes you choke and irritating. Yeah,
so let me clarify, or let me consolidate.
That's CS, by the way, is what you're looking for. CS gas.
I believe those are disanalogous. But if you hold that these things ought to be done, or it is okay for one group and thus okay for the other, we ought be able to use like VX9 or Strike 9 or Zyklon B against humans in the cases of lawful and legal warfare.
No. So I do think there probably should be limits to what's done in warfare, just because the amount of suffering that's created in it just being completely unnecessary and actually not even useful. So I think restrictions should be made there. It also causes collateral damage. But when it comes to, say, pesticides, again, my 2 big reasons for why I think it's okay to use pesticides from what I can tell, without using veganic farming, that's the only practical way of preventing things like insects from destroying crops. And two, I don't even see any evidence that this is causing more death or even suffering to insects versus insects just existing in nature.
Okay.
Peacecraft, wrap it on this.
Second question. Your delineation between rights application for carnivores versus non-carnivores seems interesting to me. Your delineation between these groups and the rights that apply to them seems predicated on the violence and harm that they cause to one another, based on the statements you made in this debate. Well, we have some zoological data that the African hippopotamus is the most dangerous animal in Africa. Despite being a herbivore, and despite only comprising 6% of the charismatic megafauna, as defined by the WWF, animal population in Africa, they make up over 56% of human death in Africa when the death is caused by an animal. Would you apply different rights violations to these animals based on their harm, regardless of their herbivore status?
Thank you, Peacecraft. You're going to have to take your answer from the background. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know hippopotamuses are territorial, so I don't know what the circumstances of the deaths are, but I'd have to, I don't have enough information on that. I'd have to consider it.
Okay, moving over on the Super Chat side, kind of moving through these. And yes, Alex, you are going to get your turn on the health stuff, I promise. Jack Gallant for $2 says, at Santeria, yeah, but it isn't and never will. He was responding to a previous super chat. Sean, 7421 for 14 Canadian dollars says, question for the ethical vegans. Say someone is allergic to plants and can only eat meat. Would you consider them to be an ethical vegan carnivore? No. This is a question which has come up multiple times. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah,
I'll be in the background here for just a quick second. Go ahead.
So there are no diseases or allergies that makes you allergic to all edible plants, and there's no known disease or set of allergies or condition that would prevent somebody from eating a purely plant-based diet.
It's a hypothetical.
Yeah, but if we're going to go by hypothetical, no, it's not okay to murder others just to benefit yourself.
But let's
survive, not benefit yourself.
But let's say you can't.
Well, survival's a benefit.
Well, exactly, but also, if we're talking about survival, you said you could kill in self-defense, for example.
Yeah,
that
this
would be
isn't
to your
self-defense.
It is and it isn't, because then you would have to.
It's not self-defense.
So in that hypothetical, you would die.
Okay, well, let's say this was only he could only eat human meat. Would it be okay for him to just kill as many people as he needs to survive?
Human, no, but that is again going to be a problem of.
What if he could only eat retarded baby meat? Is it okay for him to eat those?
No.
Okay,
right.
There you go. Okay.
So because they're human.
But there's different.
A vampire who goes around eating dogs. If you had to eat dogs to survive, yeah, it'd be bad to do that.
I don't care because
why?
Because it hurts the dogs.
So what?
Because it causes suffering.
But from your perspective, pain is nothing but an alert system from the organism. So you can't say
an alert system for the organ.
Yeah, it's just a signal. Yeah, it's just a signal.
No, it's a qualia. No, it's not just a signal.
No. It's a qualia of what? I mean,
qualia is a property of experience, like a what it's likeness phenomenon.
Okay,
guys, I'm sorry.
Experience of whom? Nothing.
Sorry for the purpose.
It's a mechanism.
For the purposes of time, guys, we have to move on to the next super chat. I'm very sorry. Richie sends in $2. Says Alex is more powerful than they anticipated. Now it's time for you to flex, I guess, Alex. You want to give us the flex or what? Vegan Gains did the flex.
I'm not as jacked as Vegan Gains.
So I guess that's a no. Spyro says, does in the let people talk dough?
Does Sinthe let people talk do?
Does Sinthe let people talk dough? There we go. Spyro sends in another $2. Says the exact same thing. Well, no, I guess it doesn't.
The question is dough.
Oh, a different question.
I do.
Yeah,
as a matter of fact, I answered that one.
Does it in the answer the question, though?
True. If you ask me a question, it's ambiguous. I'll clarify and answer all the questions for you.
Richie says,
I'll give Sinthe credit. He engaged with me in good faith, and I enjoyed the discussion.
I enjoyed you too.
I did too. $2 from Richie. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to say something in Latin to sound even fancier.
Oh, well, that's fair. Dead animals are fine. I got sweet food. VG.
Do us
talking about your sugar.
Chewing.
Richie sends in another $2, says HRT. Come on, dude. Be respectful to the debaters. Richie, $5, even though for Kornith, I feel like this is a fine critique. I make it myself often towards him, even though I do consider Kornith to be a friend. Richie, for $5, says it's not something that requires a study. Do combines kill animals? Yes, stupid. Anybody have a response to this?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Cars kill human beings. Does that make it okay for me to murder you?
Gotcha. Well, in order to allow Richie, I think, to follow up, he has called in, and we'll move on to the call.
Hey, what's up, man?
Go ahead when you're ready.
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, I guess, I wasn't planning on defending my super chats, but yeah, why not? The whole thing, like, you guys got into this like ridiculous debate about whether or not more animals were killed on a regular farm versus your own farm. Absolutely, you understand vegan gains that when you're using combines to harvest, it kills animals. You understand that, right?
Yeah, it's very few, but it does kill animals. And if you drive cars, it kills human beings. So does that make it okay for me to kill human beings?
Well, right. So yes, we should ban cars, right?
No.
You think we should ban cars, Richie?
No, that's a consequence of vegan gains.
But this is.
I'm not a consequence of Richie's. So if you're going to mention this, like, what's the contradiction with my moral view?
Your moral view has nothing to do with it. It's more like.
Well, right. Then we agree.
It's a practical understanding, right? So like if
what's the point of bringing this up? Just what's the contradiction?
If your problem is that animals are dying,
it's not.
They're not. Well, they are. That is
my
your
problem. Isn't that
right?
animals are dying? My problem is that their rights are being violated.
Animals that aren't carnivores are dying, right?
So unless you can prove that combine harvesters are somehow violating their rights, then
well, I don't believe that animals have rights, but I'm trying to like meet you at your own terms, right? So like if you're not okay with omnivores or herbivores being killed, then how could you possibly be okay? Oh, just herbivores. Okay, my mistake. If you're not okay with that on a moral level, then how could you possibly be okay with combine harvesters harvesting?
I don't necessarily have a problem with deaths or killing. My problem is with rights violations. So people die in traffic accidents. I'm not going to ban cars, and I'm not going to arrest people if the accident was no fault or not negligent.
One response here, Richie.
None of that logically follows. That's all.
What? Do you know what logically follows means, Richie?
Can I ask the question?
One response.
You can ask the question, make it very brief so that we can move over
Richie,
to Richie as well.
Where's the logic not connect there?
Okay. If you are consistently opposed to animals that are herbivores being killed, but you need sugar on your food.
Buddy, you're just ignoring what I said.
You didn't track at all, Richie.
I'm not ignoring anything that you said. It doesn't logically follow.
Can you
vegan gains does not have a problem with the killing. It's the rights violation.
The disconnect involved.
Yeah, so
what is the rights violation?
Violation?
No. Okay. But he said specifically earlier that he didn't care that a carnivore would kill a carnivore. He cared that a carnivore would kill an herbivore.
Right.
There is like a distinction that he is making between these two animals. Okay. So if that's the thing, right? Like the herbivores are the thing that we need to be protecting. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you need to have sugar on your food, and you're killing the herbivores because of that.
Can you demonstrate why it's a rights violation? Like, that's the problem.
Why do herbivores have rights, but carnivores do not?
Well, carnivores might have
where's
rights.
The distinction?
The issue I have with carnivores is that they are guaranteed to violate the rights of other animals. They have to kill. That's why I don't care if a carnivore kills another carnivore. Probably reduces rights violations.
And carnivores die more frequently than not from starvation because nature is a cruel world and being a carnivore is hard.
Good.
Okay.
I'd rather that than them survive.
Okay, all right. Last point. I know, like people
make it fast. Make it very fast.
Last point. Are you familiar with the Yellowstone? The reintroduction of the
the authors actually revoked their own paper and said that everything in it was false. It was
totally fake.
Yeah, what actually changed the flora and fauna was climate change, and the only thing that actually controlled the deer population was poaching. Wolves had no effect on the actual deer population.
Alex, I think you did way better than anybody was expecting. Jimbob, Posh.
Why did everyone have low?
Yeah, by the way, Richie, you can debate.
I've never seen you debate this particular topic.
It's because you've never debated the topic. Why shouldn't they have low expectations?
It's also meta ethics, and you were zoned in on health and stuff, so you were like a gun.
Yeah. By the way, Richie, guys, you can debate me on my channel about this if you want. Just message me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, and we can get that set up, and I'll put you two in contact. I'm fine with doing that. Richie, thank you so much for the call in.
Can I give a short just question?
I'm sorry, we don't. Posh, I'm sorry.
It will be one sentence.
We can't.
Okay.
Garuda Legends for $10 says, vegan gains. How much prison time should I do for killing and eating a chicken if they have rights? How much time would a chicken do in the can for eating a rodent?
Well, I'm not sure how much time a person should get for killing a chicken. Presumably as much time as they would get for killing somebody of equal level of intelligence and sentience. And would a chicken get time for killing a rodent? Well, rodents are omnivorous, so I think that would probably be none.
Well, are all rodents?
Well, not all.
Chickens are omnivorous.
So maybe if it's a rat or an omnivorous rodent, if it's a non-omnivorous rodent, maybe.
So is it okay for us to eat omnivorous animals? For carnivorous animals?
So if they're living in the wild, then sure. Like if you're hunting wild boar or bears, something like that.
Okay,
Gotcha.
So you would not consider killing a bear a violation of your ethics?
No.
Okay.
But how do you say that killing chickens that kill all types of animals?
Well, again, they're a domesticated species, so they only have that opportunity because humans give them that opportunity. So it's kind of like owning a cat.
They would do so in the wild.
Okay. But you can control their habitat. You're the one who bred them into existence. Like I have a cat. I don't let my cat eat like rodents or something outside or birds.
But if I see a chicken in the street, it's fair game.
No, probably not.
Accepting, property
if
rights.
you found a wild chicken, then maybe. Assuming they're omnivorous.
You don't really find wild chickens though, because the predators kill them all.
Yeah.
But,
so vegan, if I had some bear meat, you would eat it with me?
No, I don't want to eat bear meat. I'd maybe.
You eat Alex because he ate bear meat?
No, I don't think bear meat's good for you.
How do you know? You haven't tried it.
It does taste pretty good, I must admit. It's a little greasy.
Yeah.
Reverend Coffin's other son. Reverend Coffin's other son says, vegan stain simps for the come on, dude. I can't read this stuff. Come on. Be reasonable with me. Rude Mud Crab for Australian $5 says, so we should eat whales because one whale feeds a lot of us, but one humpback takes 1,814,369 innocent krill lives every day.
Yeah, I don't know if krill are sentient or if they have a level of sentient that would justify killing whales. They're incredibly intelligent and extremely sensitive animals, and they're pretty important for oceanic ecosystems. So probably not.
That would be consequentialist, though.
No. You could also consider it a rights violation if humpback whales are responsible for creating all the algae that so many other animals require to exist, then killing the whale could be considered a rights violation to those other animals.
That's also consequentialist.
But I do have it on good
rights violations. Right? So, like, if you look, Posh. So some rights the reason that you're interpreting this as consequentialism is because on vegan gains, in most people's view, some rights violations are worse than others. So, for example, it would be much worse to rape a dog than it would be to like steal some food out of a dog's bowl. But both of those would be like stealing from or harming the dog in some way. In the same way, raping a human being would be a rights violation. It'd be much worse to rape a person than to steal a penny from them, even though both are rights violations.
I understand. But from his point also, the point is whether you get to exact justice on the whale for the krill genocide. So that is, as far as I understand, I might be wrong, that is where he delineates things, irrespective of what the consequences are, just like he said with the sugar and sunflower examples.
No, the point is to minimize rights violation. That's not.
But that's the new measure of consequence.
Justice.
Isn't that the new measure of consequence, Sinthe, though?
No,
like lowering. The outcome is either an elevated amount of rights or a diminished rights, right?
If you're thinking that like any moral system, yeah, that just wouldn't be consequential. If you think that like, but you can represent any moral system by just taking the world states and running a big function over them, therefore everything's consequential. That's just not how the
it seems like if it's outcome based, it couldn't really fall out of it. I don't.
That's like saying that everything. That's like saying there's the outcome of making God mad at you. Therefore, the divine command theory is consequentialism. Yeah, it doesn't work. The argument doesn't work.
No.
I understand
the deontological duty to engage in producing the best outcomes. Therefore, consequentialism is just deontology.
So would you reject sugar? Reject sugar.
What is the connection? What?
I don't. You have a duty.
It's like brainwashing. Reject sugar. Reject sugar.
Yes, exactly.
But he said it with a hang on. He did say it with a Saruman voice. How can you possibly refute the Saruman voice, Sinthe? You can't, and you know that you can't.
Posh is sitting on a big 1984 Big Brother screen saying like, drink your corn syrup. Drink your corn syrup.
All right. Hang on. I got to move to the next ones, guys.
Was promoted by the establishment, not the other way around.
Actually, that is true. That is true. It was. The Smoking Patriot for $5 says some shekels for cigs. Lord knows I need them. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Richie for $2 says, curious how these vegans resemble vegetables. Okay. Spyro sends in Canadian $5, says at the end, give Sinthe and Jimbob. I did do it. I did. And it was actually a lot of fun. Reverend Coffin's other son. He says, the problem with veganism is it assumes an atheistic worldview. We who follow Christ do not value humans the same as animals. We believe in human supremacy. Atheistic vegans need to get to that.
Yeah, so veganism does not assume an atheistic worldview, and there are vegan Christians. They're called Seventh-day Adventists, and there's passages in the Bible that would suggest that God would want animals to be treated well. And for humans to eat only vegetables, that like the Garden of Eden. What type of food do you get in a garden? That's the food that God had.
We had a whole debate on this, but
additionally, there's like a wide variety of different. There's a wide variety of different religions other than Christianity. Like plenty of them describe veganism directly. Like deism has totally compatible with veganism.
It's not necessarily atheistic, even though you folk might subscribe to atheism. It's not necessarily. It's a non sequitur.
Yeah. And monks are often vegans, by the way.
Yeah,
but for the purpose of abstaining,
compatible as Sikhism.
Do you guys think there's a correlation between veganism? Like, do you think if you take like the average vegan person, he's more likely to be atheist than like the average meat eater? Do you think there's any correlation there?
I'm not sure. My guess would be
yes. Then probably.
I would say a 100% yes.
Yeah, my guess would be yes. My guess would be yes. Both require a higher level of intelligence on average. So yeah, I would assume so. Yeah. Atheists are higher IQ on average. Left-wingers are higher IQ on average. Vegans are higher IQ on average. Makes sense there be some correlation, yeah. We have empirics on that.
But they also suffer from more mental illness on average. They also suffer from all kinds of problems.
So that's not even true. So the mental illnesses that you're talking about are things like depression, mental illness. Some mental illnesses are more common among right-wingers. That's mental
illness.
Yes, that's one mental illness, right? But there are a lot of mental illnesses.
And you suffer from almost all of them, far more than everybody else.
Some of them, no, that's not even remotely true. There are plenty of mental illnesses. For schizophrenia, you think is more common among left-wingers?
Yeah, but this is not something that could be physiological rather than just mental.
I agree it's physiological. Physiological is in their neurology, their brain, the thing responsible for their mind.
Yeah, so but when you're talking about a mental illness where you cannot pin down what is physiological, which is many of them, it does seem that the curse of the high IQ or people who are in that category do suffer from these in a much more significant amount.
No, I totally agree. Mental illnesses that emerge because of the fact that you like analyze the world in a certain way, those are going to be more common among the left. And mental illnesses that emerge because of the fact that you have some neurological disability, those are more common among the right. It makes perfect sense to me.
I don't know. Is that true?
That's what
are physiological mental illnesses, or what you would consider to be like something you can point to physically?
That's the argument you just made.
No, it's not. The argument that I just made is that people who generally speaking, at least by the data that I've seen, the higher your IQ is, the more prone that you are to things like nihilism, which can lead to these other mental illnesses.
Yeah, but people with things like depression are lower. Or sorry, people with things like schizophrenia are lower IQ on average.
So you're saying, do you think then that just the predilection towards being right wing would lead to more physical ailments?
It's the opposite. I think that it's the case that a lot of things that make your brain worse at working make you more right wing. There's a correlation between being bad at thinking and being right wing.
Worse at working?
Being low IQ. Yeah, worse at working. Yeah, worse at functioning. Your brain's bad at your brain doesn't think as well.
Sorry.
Yeah, your brain doesn't think as well. Yeah, your brain doesn't think as well. So you're more likely to be right wing because right wing beliefs are formed by a bunch of cognitive biases.
And left wing, and what do you think left wing?
I love
rational, ice cold utilitarian analysis is all you need to be left wing.
I just actually quickly looked it up. Andrew is correct. Intelligent people are, I think it's at 20% more likely to have mental issues. So not super.
Yeah, I agree. No, I totally agree with Andrew on that.
So moving on from here, Reverend Coffin's other son for $5 says veganism is one of the worst religions. All right, I'm spent on super chats. Good night, panel and Crucible crew. Hey, we appreciate it, Reverend Coffin's other son, and thank you for the super chats and the support. I need to get to another caller, guys, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Tepio, you've been waiting very patiently in the background. Go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you for bringing me on. Andrew, you're a huge inspiration. Actually, as you were talking about monks are often vegan, I was actually writing that down at the exact same time. So I feel like that's a sign from God. If the vegans in the chat want to remain vegan, they should probably just become Orthodox. Also, you said that left-wingers have higher IQs, but right-wingers are happier. I'd just like to point that out. Also, so somebody mentioned how...
your audio cut out. I didn't hear you. Also, you're asking questions, right?
We gotta go one at a time. This is
sure. I do have questions.
Well, hang on. To be fair, hang on. To be fair, I understand that the panel would like these questions directed, but the callers do have a limited amount of time, and it is their time. So let them say what they want to say. Go ahead, caller.
Thank you. So somebody said that saving your child from a pit bull or something would not be a moral thing to do. I was just wondering, where do your morality, where do your ethics derive from? What's the foundation for your morality?
Nobody on the panel
No one said that.
Raise your hand if you think that it's wrong to save your child from a pit bull. Yeah, no hands. Oh, hey, Alex.
It's immoral to not.
I think you might be misremembering something about.
The only thing I said was you don't have the only thing I said was you don't have a moral responsibility to intervene if a pit bull was attacking somebody.
And so if a woman was being graped on the street, would you intervene?
Well, yeah, I would personally intervene.
Oh, but you wouldn't intervene if a child was being brutally massacred. Okay. Well, so anyway, I'll move on. So rights for animals. You said
hang on. Caller. Actually, this is incorrect. He was saying that if a pit bull attacked a child, he would intervene, and if a woman is getting raped, he would intervene. I just wanted to clarify that for you.
Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to mischaracterize you, vegan gains.
Caller, I think you're single-handedly the reason why right-wingers have lower IQs on average. I think you're the one reason. It's like you're bullying them all.
And I think that Sinthe is a 100% reason why most left-wingers suffer from mental illness, right?
It's the curse of the high IQ, like you said, Andrew. It's the curse of the high IQ.
Yeah, I do think that not eating meat does affect your brain matter content. But anyway, I'll move on. So rights for animals. You said that rights should have the same, or animals should have the same rights as humans. So do you think your dog, your vegan dog, should have the freedom to travel, the right to congregate, the right to liberty, pursuit of happiness? I'm sure he'd be happier eating meat.
Did you guys actually say same rights? I don't recall.
So I believe my vegan dog have the same rights as, say, a human being of like equal intelligence and capability. And they probably wouldn't be any.
So intelligence? Are you a eugenicist?
Yeah, so they probably wouldn't be any happier eating meat because if you look at the data, vegan dogs and cats seem to actually be healthier on average.
Doppler, what is the connection between what is the connection between you have a higher IQ and so there are some things that you can do that other people can't, and thinking you're a eugenicist? What's the connection there? Do you know what eugenics is?
Well, so you're saying you were bringing up the point that it's better to kill carnivores than omnivores. So it kind of made that connection in my mind. Yeah, I do have an answer for that. I'm actually giving you the answer. So it's funny that you think that
was Toplo.
Yeah, so where do you derive your morality? Why would you say that it is
it's okay.
Vegan, we got to talk about
wait, is where do you
you're saying I'm sorry, all of you. Okay, I'll tell you. So you're saying that you derive
caller,
I'm sorry.
Stop. We can't have it descend into chaos. Be very concise with your last question, please.
Yes, thank you. So what I was saying is you are basically deriving the validity of rights for something from its intelligence level. So would you say it's okay to kill a child or a retarded person?
No,
but they can't vote. Retarded babies can't vote. Right, Toplo? Retarded babies can't vote?
No babies can vote.
You're retarded babies can vote.
The position was we can kill the retarded babies and the other animals that we killed.
Well, no, because you were just saying
this.
I'm sorry, because you were just saying that it would be better to kill something with a lower intelligence.
You have a very low intelligence, and I think it'd be wrong to kill you, Toplo. Your Down syndrome is not a reason to kill you.
It's Tapio.
It's me.
Tapio,
eugenics. So you guys are eugenicists.
That's not eugenics.
No,
you're a fucking dumb fuck murdering other people. Do you think it's a eugenics position to kill serial killers?
Sure. I mean, you could make that. You could make that argument. Sure.
Tapio, you're a dysgenic experiment.
Toplo.
Yeah, you could make the argument that this is a eugenics program. I mean, because they you could say that their genetics had to do something with their behavior.
People with low intelligence.
What's that?
Are we in favor of killing people with low intelligence?
You were making a case that it would be an animal with lower intelligence than an animal with higher intelligence.
Are we saying that's okay to kill people with low intelligence?
We're vegans.
Well, what's the difference between humans and animals?
Are we saying that's okay to kill animals? Tapio, perfect. Are we saying it's okay to kill animals either?
You said it would be better to kill an animal with lower intelligence.
Are we saying it's okay? Is this a good thing to kill the animals? Answer the question.
Does not make it okay.
Tapio, you can stub your toe, or I can shoot you in your head.
There's lots of things that we do.
It's better to punch somebody than to stab somebody. Punching.
Try to remember that this is the caller's time. Let him try to get his words in. Last thing, Tapio, then we have to move on. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a steel worker, and I basically need to eat meat. Otherwise, I will shrivel up and die, and I won't be able to do my job properly. So what do you recommend for people who have labor guns and sit around behind?
Show your guns, dude. Show your guns, huh? You got more muscle than me. I haven't eaten meat.
Just show my guns.
Yeah, there's the biggest person on this panel.
I just got a gym membership.
The most yoked person. Nobody's gonna argue with that even, right? You know,
but aren't you a professional bodybuilder?
How is your gut health? How does your stomach health feel?
What do you mean, my gut
Does your tummy feel good after eating 30 pounds of carbs?
Well, I don't eat 30 pounds of carbs in one meal.
Obviously.
All right.
It was an exaggeration.
Caller, thank you. I do appreciate your call in. Unfortunately, I have to move on. Thank you so much. And I have to get over to the super chats. Now, Alex, this is where it's going to start to open up for your portion here. I'm sorry we had to kind of do this in a bit of an unorthodox way, but I wanted to make sure that I could get to everybody's chats. So kind of moving through here. We got to that. The problem with, veganism. So this one comes in from Henry Wiley, who sends in $7 Canadian, says veganism isn't even for the animals. Animals can't even perceive rights or exploitation. It's purely for their own comfort, sense of moral superiority.
Okay, yeah, I guess not abusing children is for our own comfort and moral superiority. It's not for the benefit of anybody else.
I'm like 50-50 on this because obviously animals can feel pain and can feel stress and can feel torture. So obviously that part is not true. And I don't think it's just for moral superiority, but you will have to acknowledge that for some vegans, maybe not you personally, the idea of moral superiority plays a role in the vegan lifestyle they pick.
$10 comes in from Garuda Legends, who says, doesn't Vegan Gains violate the rights of its cat by not letting it choose if the cat wants to eat meat or vegan food? Removing choice and forcing a rabbit diet upon a cat is a violation of its rights.
Well, whatever food I give my cat, I would be technically forcing it to eat that food, right? So I don't know exactly how you're supposed to introduce choice to a cat without just letting it outside. And if I were to let it outside and eat whatever it wants, like hunt squirrels or rabbits or something, that would violate the rights of those other animals. So by giving it vegan food, that reduces the most amount of rights violations.
Vegan, where do you get the vegan stuff that you feed your animals? I'm just legitimately curious.
Yeah. So we feed the cat Benevo vegan cat food. It has all the nutrients cat needs, including like.
What about for the dog?
And then the cat. So the dogs, they were eating Natural Balance vegan formula. Then we tried the Benevo, and then we went back to the Natural Balance.
Okay.
Okay, so kind of moving on from there. This one comes in from Spyro, who says, I want to say that even though Sinthe was a bit annoying, everyone, including him, had some banger arguments back and forth. This was one of the best debates I've seen in a while. Good job to all around. And hey, all of us on this panel are glad that you enjoyed the content. Imperious sends in $2, says, just sending love. Spyro is a dirty son of a bitch. And then Spyro responds with, why is Simperius such an asshatado? Okay, fair enough. Imperius sends in $2 to respond and says, Spyro, learn English, maple drinker.
There's nothing better than when people fight with super chats.
Hey, that's fine. Spyro responds with $5 Canadian, outspending Imperius and saying, here's some Canadian English for you, Imperius. You're a hoser. Circle G sends in a super chat for $5, says, if the manufacturing of Adderall hurt and killed animals, would Sinthe stop taking it?
Good one. You need to be on Adderall, then you'd be able to focus more on the debate and the arguments, and you'd ever make any chat that's ever of relevance. So you've never in your life done that.
Just fucking laugh. Just laugh. That was funny. That was fucking funny. Yeah, it's like
it was okay.
It was okay.
I've heard better roasts.
Okay, go ahead.
Roast.
That's a good one.
I want to ask the vegans this: if there is an inoculation that makes people allergic to meat, would you advocate for it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And would you give it to your own kids without their consent?
Oh yeah,
you would.
There's an inoculation that made people allergic to raping. Would you give them it, Jimbob?
That's a behavior of like
answer my question.
An act.
Don't be a worm. Answer the question.
No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't? What about raping babies?
No, I wouldn't give them an inoculation.
But it would stop
you'd want rape
babies.
to occur?
Jesus.
Is that what I said?
Jesus.
Well,
you're choosing for it to occur. Yeah,
you're doing the same thing the last quarter.
Possibility to occur.
No. I'm giving human beings the freedom and liberty to act on their will.
Rape, right? It's really important to have the free will to grape children.
No, it's free will isn't actually important. I think that's a moral.
Important to be able to grape
free will to grape babies.
I'm just curious about this. Have you guys ever seen the movie A Clockwork Orange?
Yes. I haven't. I've been meaning to watch that.
The whole point of the movie is to say what happens if you do take away the will of a person to do violence and grape and things like this.
Right, but
in the exploration, it kind of makes the determination that this might be actually very fucking bad to do.
Well, that's because of the experimentation and everything being done. It's like if you could just give somebody a shot so that they couldn't commit grape against children, I think we'd all be in favor of that.
That's essentially what they did do in the movie.
How about think about committing grape? Why stop at grape? Why
I think
not thoughts?
Sometimes the themes of movies promote messages that aren't true.
How do we get?
That's true. I'm just saying that I think it's an interesting. It was an interesting concept to see what happens if you do take away these things that we consider these base instincts, especially ultra violence. It could actually be detrimental. I just think it's interesting.
If there was no other side effect, but it prevented the grape of children, why the hell wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't I? Because I believe that
that God wants children to be raped.
Are you going to let me answer?
Yeah, sure.
God does actually let things happen and let people act on their will, and I think that's the only way you can actually have good in the world is if people have free will.
What if you could put up a net around babies that made people sick when they entered it with the intent to rape?
What?
No, because then you're causing harm.
Would that be okay or bad? If there was a net that you could put up where if somebody enters the net and they have the intent to rape babies, no, it's your house gives people the intent to rape babies that walk into it. It makes them sick.
Are you talking about barriers to rapists?
I'm talking about a magic fucking dome, Jimbob. A magic dome that if you walk in and a magic dome you can put over children that if you walk through and you have the intent to rape that kid, you get sick. Would that be okay to do?
Sick? How? You're already sick. What are you talking about?
No,
are you retarded?
You get sick?
You can't stand anymore. You start shaking. You're throwing up. You're physically ill.
The ailments that you get in A Clockwork Orange from trying to do violence.
It's a baby raping force field. It's a baby raping force field. If you come in and you want to rape a baby, you start throwing up and you can't rape the baby.
Grape.
You can't grape the baby.
Damn, how many people are trying to grape babies?
Jimbob, can
I will say, I agree. I will agree with Vegan Gains on this, because raping babies is against the law, right? So I don't really see any harm. If there's no side effects, no downsides, I don't think none of that is possible. But if it wasn't a hypothetical of giving people that injection to prevent something that is illegal. So yeah.
By the way, Jimbob, they may actually have a computer chip in the future that they can implant in pedophile brains to prevent them from being attracted to children. You think that would be a bad thing?
Yeah.
Laughing's not
a counter to the position.
Have an argument.
So this is an idea from somebody
is thinking about that the same as acting on it?
No, but I'm talking.
So then why would I take away the thought from someone?
Well, let's just say
I would want holy shit
to children.
I would want to take away the thought from people who have the attraction to kids and want to fuck kids
and eating steaks Listen,
Jimbob, listen and entertain.
Yeah, listen to you guys. You guys are fucking insane.
This argument. What if you gave somebody therapy that made them not want to fuck kids anymore? Would that be bad to do?
Give them therapy?
That made them not want to fuck kids anymore.
What kind of therapy?
You fucking sit them down and you talk to them and make them not want to fuck kids anymore.
If you could talk them into other forms, but taking away their because you're taking away their because you're taking away their will to think and manage their thoughts.
Well,
but
so psychotherapy.
It's illegal.
Well,
psychotherapy.
What if
taking that away?
What if a person was acting insane and you could put a chisel up to their head and give it a smack in a certain part of the brain?
I don't think lobotomies are effective.
Away.
That actually,
they were effective.
They're not effective for what I care about.
They worked in some cases, but if there was an effective way of doing that, then yeah, sure.
You know why I wouldn't open that door, you guys? Because people like you would actually then make it okay for people not to think about eating meat or not think about this or not think about that.
But you can get rid of these bad behaviors now. I mean, you literally could. They would take this little thing, put it up against your head and give it and that would take away these bad behaviors, including
I think if somebody
chooses... Wait, what are you talking about, Andrew? Are you talking about a hypothetical or what?
No, this is reality. This happened.
Lobotomize people. They're not going to
what exactly is the name of the treatment?
They would take a small tool and put it into your skull, and they would hit it with a hammer. Yeah, they would hit it. Well the thing is lobotomy takes many forms. They could do chemical lobotomies too, but they would often just actually smack it into your skull, destroy a part of your brain that was associated with these thought patterns, and that would solve it. And that seemed to be really fucking bad.
It was ineffective. Yeah, it was ineffective, and a bunch of other things that made it retarded.
Getting rid of the behavior.
The reason
it was effective at getting rid of a lot of other behavior.
A whole bunch of negative downsides to the person's mental stability and health. It wasn't good for the people. That's why.
Right, but this is kind of the broad point and why I brought up a Clockwork Orange. You don't know what else you might be taking away. That's the thing.
No, for sure. I agree with you. We're just engaging in the hypothetical, assuming there's no downsides. But I agree with you. That's really hard to ensure.
Yeah, but if it's baked into the hypothetical, there is no downside and it just gets rid of the behavior. Yeah. Sure, but the thing is that's kind of baked in, right?
That's the way I read the hypothetical from the vegan crowd.
Well, I mean, fair enough. Let me move on, guys. I want to kind of power through these chats. Spyro sends in another Canadian $10. Kornith was way out of line in this debate. He got totally unhinged and spurred. Kornith, dude, you got to take a chill pill, man. You're too much. Holy shit, he says.
Sorry, I'm going to get help for my issues.
Yeah,
Sorry,
maybe
guys.
it's the stupid hat. Stop wearing stupid hats. Alf for Canadian $5 says, just a friendly reminder for everyone, bear jail. Folks, bear jail. That is all. You're welcome to respawn vegan gains.
I don't even know what that means. Like eating bears.
Again, I don't see what's absurd about trying to prevent carnivorous animals from violating the rights of other animals, and if putting them in captivity is a way of doing that, then it's a way of doing that.
Gotcha. Imperia still arguing, says, joke's on you, Spyro. We Irish invented being hosers. The Irish have never invented anything. Spyro for $5 Canadian says, joke's on, or sorry. He says, because the Irish are descendants of Greeks. Man, they're getting into an ethnic. Yeah, who knows? Who cares? Appreciate that very much, Scribblet. I'm sorry I have to power past it to get in the paid super chat. Ziggy21 $5 says, given he is a secular materialist, what is Sinthe's evidence for moral realism? What
the fuck is your evidence of a materialist? What?
What a loaded question that was.
Yeah, when have I ever said anywhere that I'm a materialist? In fact, I've specifically argued that I'm not a materialist. Like, what are you talking about? You're an idiot, Siggy. You're retarded. So my evidence for moral realism is the fact that we have the reason we have evidence for math, we have evidence for moral realism. The evidence are the fact that we have a first-hand account of these things. Same evidence. We can like experience it directly. You can experience bad experiences. You can experience good experiences. You can understand those experiences have an inherent good or bad aspect to them. It's very obvious. You can have a first-hand experience. If you've ever felt bad, you've got the evidence of moral realism right there.
How do you experience a number, though? Like, just for an example,
you think, and you experience it in your mind.
Through what sense, though? What material
imagine
sense?
There being a one aspect, a oneness to a thing, or a two-ness to a thing. So you can imagine there being one of a thing or two of a thing in your head.
No, but let's to the ethical point. I mean, there have been plenty of cultures which were pretty brutal. The Aztecs, lots of Mesopotamian cultures, yes. Central Asian cultures. So what would you appeal to them?
The fact, the same thing I would appeal to on all the other stance-dependent domains. They knew less. They had determined less. They didn't have the same scientific. They didn't have the same mathematical proofs we do, even though they're deducible.
Right, but
the same kind of axioms that were already available to them. Right, there are people in the past who listen. There are people in the past who had less access to the kind of things that are stance-dependent already. They had less access to stance-dependent scientific truths, empirical truths, moral truths, and mathematical truths. And over time, we've gotten more and more access to them, which is why the left is continuing to win.
I don't believe. Well, I do believe the left is continuing to win, but that's why I believe the world's not going very well. But at the same time,
despite the fact that less babies are being raped, that less people are being murdered on average, that the crime rate's going down over time, that the less people are wiping their ass with leaves, the world's going much worse.
Now list the bad things.
Yes.
Do your best.
Left wingers wipe their bums with toilet paper.
The birth rate is going into the toilet.
That's what I'm saying. Demographic collapse is
birth rate.
inevitable.
Yeah, the birth rate is one aspect of an issue that we could fix by making mild adjustments to the way that we incentivize people to breed.
Let me go back to the point I was making. If someone says that it is morally superior to have the powerful rule, the strong rule, just go ahead, try to kill anyone you can. Again, we would have Roman culture. Rome was not particularly, unsuccessful as a civilization on a historical analysis. We have plenty of them that just go and crush the weak because the powerful have moral jurisdiction over them by merely being
their society was incredibly unstable. They were reliant on slavery, and they had power changes.
Lots of societies are unstable. Our society is unstable.
Okay, guys, we can't.
But Rome lasted a lot longer than the United States, for example. The United States.
So far, the United States is 300. The United States is the longest existing government on planet Earth. There's not a single government that has existed longer than we currently do.
If you want to go into what is the same government, because you have China's the longest existing civilization.
It's not government. Yeah, it's not the same government, is it? You know it isn't.
Exactly, but I would argue that the American government is not qualitatively the same government. But
guys, we can't. We can't stop, Sinthe. We can't stay here. We have to keep going on the super chats, guys.
The Senate is now elected. Didn't used to be.
What's the argument there?
All right. We're moving on. Spyro sends in $5 Canadian. If you could empirically prove being a vegan contributes to climate change, would veganism be morally wrong, or would nobody still give a flying fuck, Sinthe?
If you could empirically prove that being vegan, it depends on how much you contribute to climate change, right? So we're weighing and balancing different factors. It's not just one factor. It's
Why did I have a feeling you had a purse dog, Alex? I had a gut feeling. It couldn't be a big giant bulldog or big German Shepherd. It's a little fucking
dog.
purse dog.
It's my girlfriend's dog. I have a big Siberian Husky. I'm just watching my girlfriend's dog.
Oh, well, now I have to cope. Okay, moving on to Wicked Wally for $2 says, sounds like those whales are serial krillers. Wicked Wally deserves a timeout, except he's a mod. He does the timing out. $5 Canadian from Spyro. If a herbivore went around graping humans, would it be okay to eat herbivores?
If the only way to prevent them from graping would be to kill them, then sure.
What if the end of graping required like a huge elevation in graping in the short term? Would you support it in the short term?
So you have to grape all the grapists to stop them from graping?
No, not them.
I volunteer. I got it handled. Okay, I got that shit handled. Let me know where they are.
Why does that not surprise me?
You guys just want more grape to go around. I'm here stopping it. I'm out here on the front lines of graping the grapists.
Yes, but they will realize it's not that big of a deal. So you're probably
true.
Set yourself up for that one.
Moving on, Canadian $5.
That's like a compliment.
Spyro again says, if a Christian is a vegan and they die, do they immediately go to hell, or does God just permanently put them out of their... Oh, dude, they're getting too brutal for this, Spyro. I can't even get into them. William Smith for $14 Canadian. I have a sample for you. I want to bid on that SIG contract. Let me know. SIG contract. I don't
cigarette, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, cigarette I'm totally confused. If a lot of vegans are left-wingers, does that mean they bring the average IQ of the left-wingers down by 100 points or
vegans
down
are higher
by
IQ on
200
average.
points? They're higher IQ on average. Wasn't Hitler a vegan? I'm just saying.
I think he's a vegetarian.
Yeah.
But,
okay. Henry Wiley for $2.79 says, "Oi, I made more in-depth dono chats to read those. I'm powering through these chats fast as I can, guys." Aaron P for $2 says, "What's the best vegan food?"
If you're talking about health and longevity, probably beans and lentils.
What tastes the best? Meat flavored food?
Depends
like
on your
ribs?
personal preference. I like.
Do you guys eat food that tastes like meat? Any of you guys?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like bacon and stuff.
No, I don't eat.
No, not the penis meat, but like
the penis.
What the?
That was Posh almost had a joke there. He got something in his mind.
Yeah. Sorry, it's almost 5 a.m. here, but I mean like meat, like penis.
Clip
and
that.
then you're all gay.
Enough.
I got you.
All right. Richie for $5 says a shot that prevents grape is called. Oh, dude, you guys are you're going way too ham here. William Smith for $7 Canadian says phenomenal movie reference. One of Kubrick's finest. That and the moon landing, I think, were two of his best. In the movie. Moving over to $5 from FB. It says atheism is so senseless and odious to mankind that it never had many professors. Isaac Newton.
Well, Isaac Newton was also autistic.
You have a source for that?
Brutal.
He
potentially
likely had Asperger's, given.
And he never had sex. He never got any
There's a
pussy.
virgin. That's,
He died pussyless.
Yeah.
you can't support a man like that.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. This one comes in from Name 7861 for $2. Free will, collectivism, no microchips. Coming in again is animal experiments on carnivores moral. That's a great question, actually. Are animal experiments, if you had to experiment on animals to try to determine whether or not a product was safe for human use, as a carnivore has less moral value to you guys, is it then okay to experiment on the animal for the purposes? No.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's cruel and unusual.
I would say if it's some kind of medication or pharmaceutical, then it's fine. But if it's something that's like unnecessary, like makeup, then probably not.
Yeah, I'd rather, if we had to experiment on anybody with dangerous kind of things that are painful and torturous, I'd rather it be like pedophiles or something. People who've committed horrible crimes.
Yeah,
over
to animal trials are like a big part of like how the scientific process
they're actually
works.
Useless. They don't do anything.
How are they useless?
Yeah, they're practically useless. If you're talking about medication, they're practically useless. That's why they're actually starting to get rid of the requirement to use animal testing for medication.
What is your claim based on that they're useless?
Well, empirical data. So animals are not people. They respond completely differently to medications.
Yeah, there's some difference, sure. But
yeah, so Tylenol, for instance.
Lab rats are specifically bred to be as close to humans as possible.
Well, yeah, they make genetic mutations, but again, the data just isn't useful. Like, you're going to end up experimenting on humans anyway, so it doesn't really make any sense.
I've never seen any data to support this.
Again, like a medication like Tylenol, for instance, was actually about to get scrapped because chimpanzees were getting horrible allergic reactions to it, but they went to human trials anyway, and it seemed to be really valuable.
Sometimes things don't work.
You don't have any. So with an animal model, you don't have a reliable model. So
one at a time, gentlemen. One at a time.
That's risk management. You try to get as close as possible to make the risk as low as possible.
I'll be really curious to see the data than the fact that animal trials don't reduce the risk for human trials at all.
Sounds incredibly dubious.
I mean, but it would be
extrapolation on your part.
It would be consistent for me to say, like, if there was just two plots of food and one could potentially be poisoned and the other not, rather than feed, on a 50-50 chance to my kid. If I had a dog and could test it on the dog, don't you think I should?
Maybe, but again, that's not how like medical research is conducted.
No, I agree. I'm just saying for the purpose of like this isolated hypothetical, if I had to choose between two dishes and I had a dog there or a child, shouldn't I choose the dog?
I suppose, but yeah, again, there's ways of mitigating risk that wouldn't require you to exploit like an animal.
Okay.
Like how? If you can't test
so
on
the dose makes the poison. If there's a potential risk for a medication to actually cause adverse side effects, just give a low dose. You can also use in vitro.
No one thought of this before.
You can also, well, again, there's other reasons for why they use animals in research. Part of it has to do with actual total funding you're going to receive. It's not even to do with the usefulness of the experiment. And again, you can do in vitro experiments on actual living human tissue. There's ways around this. And again,
guys,
animal models are unreliable, so what's the point of using them to begin with?
I have to move on. We're already over the 3-hour mark. I'm trying to kind of power through this a bit. Tapio for $5 says, it's fun triggering the vegans. Wish you would have let me finish one sentence. Thank you for trying to keep it orderly, Andrew. You are a king. You're very welcome. I hope everybody did enjoy the moderation. I know that these can be very difficult to do 3 versus 3, but I think overall it went fairly well. The Jolly Llama, unfortunately, I cannot read that super chat because a certain word that triggers YouTube. Henry says veganism is not left wing since it doesn't actually give more power to the working class. It actually removes the ability to self-sufficiently homestead. That seems like a legitimate criticism. You guys have a response?
Potatoes.
It's not left wing or right wing. It has nothing to do with politics, in my opinion.
I disagree. I think that it does have an involvement with politics, but I think that it's like I don't think that being left wing is about how much power you give the working class. I think if there was no working class and it was like either you're a capitalist living off of automation or you're homeless, I still think you could be left wing by being on the side of the homeless. I think left wing is when you're on the side of people who are the disenfranchised, which is why I think veganism is left wing.
But you can be right wing and be a vegan.
Of course, yeah, you can be right winger. You can be a right winger and have some left wing views. Like you can be a right.
We do actually have right wingers in the chat. We do actually have right wingers in the chat who are vegans. We do.
Yeah, it's rare, but there are even some vegan Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, I looked at the comment that you wouldn't. Yeah, we can talk about that offline later.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just gonna finish these up, Alex, and then I'll let everybody get on their way. Okay, Spyro Sends in $5, says, my girlfriend's dog said every embarrassed base dude who owns a purse dog. That's funny.
There's pretty clear evidence that I don't own the dog, but yeah.
Yeah, I fight climate change by eating those grass munchers, the cows. That's how I save the planet. Prove me wrong.
Because you fund more of them existing by eating those grass munchers, dumbass.
If your position is to reduce harm, can you prove that the consequences of giving government the authority to force behavior changes via chemical injection wouldn't become more harmful than free will? I'm not sure that that's something which is demonstrated. He's actually using kind of the Clockwork Orange argument, saying you could be doing more harm than good by blocking these behaviors that you find to be unethical.
100%. I was engaging in the hypothetical, assuming there's no downsides, but there most likely will be downsides, and there most likely will be consequences. 100%.
Yeah. So you were just engaging in what was baked in. In other words, if they say baked into the hypothetical is there can't be any other problems, then yes, you can bite the bullet because who cares? But under the assumption that there could be, some type of mitigating risk, which would be absolutely likely. Can we agree that probably microchipping people's brains might not be the best idea?
Well, I think especially with targeted therapy, you're probably going to see a lower risk of something bad going wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
microchipping is probably not
preventing somebody who is attracted to children being attracted to children, something like that.
Well, you have no idea because this technology is not even out yet. This is purely your speculation, which you might be right about.
It does exist. It's just that
there's a microchip that makes you less likely to rape children.
But the technology does exist for microchips to do behavioral. So one example of this, Alex, is there are technologies which are available that are designed to shoot chemicals into your brain. They can actually be transmitted into you just via your hand or inside of your arm, and they actually send out a chemical which is designed to do, behavioral modification and things like this. And this is likely the microchip in your brain is not interfacing with your brain, but rather it's excreting some type of chemical every once in a while or something like this.
Okay. I've never heard of this. So this
is old technology, man.
So I'd be really curious to take a look at an article later. So there's actually legit technology right now, like microchips that will prevent you from raping a child?
I don't know if it's that sophisticated, but there is definitely technology which exists that could produce chemicals that would go to your brain that might help in the prevention of some behaviors.
Okay.
Yeah, and even including nicotine reduction, by the way. Even nicotine, there are things which can excrete chemicals that help you with that.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, in some states, they actually force convicted pedophiles to take medication that removes all sexual desire. So
there's chemical castration.
Yeah,
I've heard about the medication. I've never heard about the chips.
So these are trial things, right? This is not generally open for the general public, but this has been experimented with since the 60s. In fact, this is old technology, putting something inside of you that every once in a while opens up and it releases a chemical. Sometimes they use psychedelics. That was a big one for like MK.
Yeah, I know about the psychedelics. Andrew, after the debate, can you send me an article? I'm curious to look at.
Yeah, I can. The Air Force actually released a whole thing on it. It was interesting. Wicked Wally for $2 says Newton didn't understand the gravity of decisions. That was fucking awful. Name 7861 for $5 says, would it be moral for aliens who are more sentient than humans to eat humans? That's an interesting question. No,
it would not.
Only virgins.
Okay, we only got a few more here, guys. I'm sorry. $20 comes in from Joseph Newton. Says Sinthe does too much Ritalin. Kornith doesn't do enough, and Vegan Gains does just enough. It's kind of funny. $4 from Henry Weil says veganism is supposed to be for the animals. Animals don't understand rights or exploitation. They just don't want to suffer. Regen animal AG mixed with pharmaceutical is the most pragmatic way to bring the suffering we cause to animals and the economical damage down. Did anybody want to respond to that?
Yeah, you do not need regenerative agriculture. You don't need animals for regenerative agriculture. No evidence of that whatsoever. So I don't know about that claim.
Henry Wiles sends another $4 super chat and says, think about it. You're never going to convince a growing number of thriving animal-based dieters and ex-vegans. Animals don't understand rights, so worrying about them isn't for the animal, it's for your own comfort. Be realistic.
Neither do babies. Babies don't understand rights. It's still wrong to beat babies to death with shovels. What a stupid argument.
I was like, everyone on this panel is a vegan. All the vegans here were convinced to veganism. We weren't born vegans. So obviously there are effective means of convincing people to veganism.
You could sort of argue that babies are in a state of development.
Yeah,
if they were stunted, it would still be wrong to beat them with shovels. If babies brain development,
but that's sort of a disease. It's not a disease to be a dog.
It doesn't matter.
It's irrelevant.
The outcome's the same.
No, not really, because you would have to treat an aberration in one species as the same as a normal state of affairs.
If genes mutation,
gentlemen,
develop identical to a dog, but you just had technically had human DNA in all other respects, it would still be wrong to beat you to death with a shovel.
Hang on, gentlemen. Last super chat of the night. $5 comes in from Alex. No message entered. He just wanted to show support for the channel. We appreciate all the callers. We appreciate everyone. Alex, I'm sorry you didn't get as much of a chance to get into this as you wanted to, but I want to get
just ask one question.
You can, yes, of course.
Okay. So I wrote this down. Kornith, in your opening statement, you said the only deficiency with a vegan diet is cholesterol. So could you tell me how someone on a vegan diet gets B12 or omega-3?
Supplements or supplemented food.
So then
for B12, it would have to be a supplement. For omega-3, you can get it from
cholesterol is not the only deficiency.
Cholesterol isn't a deficiency on a vegan diet. Cholesterol is not an essential.